What is she doing here? As if I didn't know. Where did you go? Mat demanded hoarsely. You all just disappeared, and now you're in Caerhien ahead of us. Loyal? The OGA shrugged uncertainly and eyed the crowd, his ears twitching. Half the people had turned from the fire to watch the newcomers. A few edged closer, trying to listen. Rand let Perrin give him a hand up. How did you find the inn? He glanced at Verin, kneeling with her hands on the sniffer's head. Her, in a way, Perrin said. The guards at the gate wanted our names, and a fellow coming out of the guardhouse gave a jump when he heard Ingtar's name. He said he didn't know it, but he had a smile that shouted, "Lie a mile off." I think I know the man you mean, Rand said. He smiles that way all the time. Verin showed him her ring, Mat put in, and whispered in his ear. He looked and sounded sick, his cheeks flushed and tight, but he managed to grin. Rand had never noticed his cheekbones before. I couldn't hear what she said, but I didn't know whether his eyes were going to pop out of his head or he was going to swallow his tongue first. All of a sudden, he couldn't do enough for us. He told us you were waiting for us and right where you were staying. Offered to guide us himself, but he really looked relieved when Veran told him no. He snorted. Lord Rand of Household Thor. It's too long a story to explain now, Rand said. Where are Uno and the rest? We will need them, in the foregate. Mat frowned at him and went on slowly. Uno said they'd rather stay there than inside the walls. From what I can see, I'd rather be with them. Rand, why will we need Uno? Have you found, by Boyce, them? It was the moment Rand realized suddenly he had been avoiding. He took a deep breath and looked his friend in the eye. Mat, I had the dagger and I lost it. The dark friends took it back. He heard gasps from the Caerhienan listening, but he did not care. They could play their great game if they wanted, but Ingtar had come, and he was finished with it at last. They can't have gone far, though. Ingtar had been silent, but now he stepped forward and gripped Rand's arm. You had it? And he looked around at the onlookers, the other thing? They took that back too, Rand said quietly. Ingtar pounded a fist into his palm and turned away. Some of the Caerhienan backed off from the look on his face. Mat chewed his lip, then shook his head. I didn't know it was found, so it isn't as if I had lost it again. It is just still lost. It was plain he was speaking of the dagger, not the horn of Valere. We'll find it again. We have 2 sniffers now. Perrin is one, too. He followed the trail all the way to the foregate, after you vanished with Hurin and Loyal. I thought you might have just run off. By Boyce. Well, you know what I mean. Where did you go? I still don't understand how you got so far ahead of us. That fellow said you had been here days. Rand glanced at Perrin. He's a sniffer, and found Perrin studying him in return. He thought Perrin muttered something. Shadow killer? I must have heard him wrong. Perrin's yellow gaze held him for a moment, seeming to hold secrets about him, telling himself he was having fancies. I'm not mad. Not yet. He pulled his eyes away. Perrin was just helping a still shaky Hurin to his feet. I feel right as goose feathers, he was saying. Still a little tired, but by Boyce. He let the words trail off, seeming to see her for the first time, to realize what had happened for the first time. The tiredness will last a few hours, she told him. The body must strain to heal itself quickly. The Caerhienan reader rose. Aes Sedai, she said softly. Verin inclined her head, and the reader made a full curtsy. As quiet as they had been, the words Aes Sedai ran through the crowd in tones ranging from awe to fear to outrage. Everyone was watching now. Not even Quale gave any attention to his own burning in, and Rand thought a little caution might not be amiss after all. Do you have rooms yet? He asked. We need to talk, and we can't do it here. A good idea, Verin said. I have stayed here before, at the Great Tree. We will go there. Loyal went to fetch the horses. The inn roof had now fallen in completely, but the stables had not been touched, and soon they were making their way through the streets, all riding except for Loyal, who claimed he had grown used to walking again. Perrin held the lead line to one of the pack horses they had brought south. Hurin, Rand said, how soon can you be ready to follow their trail again? Can you follow it? The men who hit you and started the fire left a trail, didn't they? I can follow it now, my lord, and I could smell them in the street. It won't last long, though. There weren't any Trollocs, and they didn't kill anybody. Just men, my lord. Dark friends, I suppose, but you can't always be sure of that by smell. A day, maybe, before it fades. I don't think they can open the chest either, Rand, Loyal said, or they would just have taken the horn. It would be much easier to take that if they could, rather than the whole chest. Rand nodded. They must have put it in a cart, or on a horse. Once they get it beyond the foregate, they'll join the Trollocs again for sure. You will be able to follow that trail, Urin. I will, my lord. Then you rest until you're fit, Rand told him. The sniffer looked steadier, but he rode slumped, and his face was weary. At best, they will only be a few hours ahead of us. If we ride hard, by Boyce. Suddenly he noticed that the others were looking at him, Verin and Ingtar, Mat and Perrin. He realized what he had been doing, and his face colored. I am sorry, Ingtar. It's just that I've become used to being in charge, I suppose. I'm not trying to take your place. Ingtar nodded slowly. Moiraine chose well when she made Lord Aegomar name you my second. Perhaps it would have been better if the Amelin seat had given you the charge. The Shianaran barked a laugh. At least you have actually managed to touch the horn. After that they rode in silence. The great tree could have been twin to the defender of the Dragon Wall, a tall stone cube of a building with a common room panelled in dark wood and decorated with silver, a large polished clock on the mantel over the fireplace. The innkeeper could have been Quale's sister. Mistress Tiedra had the same slightly plump look, and the same unctuous manner, and the same sharp eyes, the same air of listening to what was behind the words you spoke. But Tiedra knew Verin, and her welcoming smile for the Aes Sedai was warm. She never mentioned Aes Sedai aloud, but Rand was sure she knew. Tiedra and a swarm of servants saw to their horses and settled them in their rooms. Rand's room was as fine as the one that had burned, but he was more interested in the big copper bathtub. 2 serving men wrestled through the door, and the steaming buckets of water scullery maids brought up from the kitchen. One look in the mirror above the washstand showed him a face that looked as if he had rubbed it with charcoal, and his coat had black smears across the red wool. He stripped off and climbed into the tub, but he thought as much as washed. Verin was there, one of 3 Aes Sedai that he could trust not to try to gentle him themselves, or turn him over to those who would, or so it seemed at least. One of 3 who wanted him to believe he was the Dragon Reborn, to use him as a false dragon. She's Moiraine's eyes watching me, Moiraine's hand trying to pull my strings. But I have cut the strings. His saddlebags had been brought up, and a bundle from the pack-horse containing fresh clothes. He toweled off and opened the bundle, and sighed. He had forgotten that both the other coats he had were as ornate as the one he had tossed on the back of a chair for a maid to clean. After a moment he chose the black coat to suit his mood. Silver herons stood on the high collar, and silver rapids ran down his sleeves, water battered to froth against jagged rocks. Transferring things from his old coat to his new, he found the parchments. Absently, he stuffed the invitations in his pocket as he studied Celine's 2 letters. He wondered how he could have been such a fool. She was the beautiful young daughter of a noble house. He was a shepherd whom Aes Sedai were trying to use, a man doomed to go mad if he did not die first. Yet he could still feel the pull of her just looking at her writing, could almost smell the perfume of her. I am a shepherd, he told the letters, not a great man, and if I could marry anyone, it would be Egwene, but she wants to be Aes Sedai, and how can I marry any woman, love any woman, when I'll go mad and maybe kill her? Words could not lessen his memory of Celine's beauty, though, or the way she made his blood go warm just by looking at him. It almost seemed to him that she was in the room with him, that he could smell her perfume, so much so that he looked around and laughed to find himself alone. Having fancies like I'm addled already, he muttered. Abruptly he tipped back the mantle of the lamp on the bedside table, lit it, and thrust the letters into the flame. Outside the inn, the wind picked up to a roar, leaking in through the shutters and fanning the flames to engulf the parchment. Hurriedly he tossed the burning letters into the cold hearth just before the fire reached his fingers. He waited until the last blackened curl went out before he buckled on his sword and left the room. Verin had taken a private dining room where shelves along the dark walls held even more silver than those in the common room. Mat was juggling 3 boiled eggs and trying to appear nonchalant. Ingtar peered into the unlit fireplace, frowning. Loyal had a few books from Faldara still in his pockets and was reading one beside a lamp. Perrin slouched at the table, studying his hands clasped on the tabletop. To his nose, the room smelled of beeswax used to polish the paneling. It was him, he thought. Rand is the shadow killer. Light, what's happening to all of us? His hands tightened into fists, large and square. These hands were meant for a smith's hammer, not an axe. He glanced up as Rand entered. Perrin thought he looked determined, set on some course of action. The Aes Sedai motioned Rand to a high-backed armchair across from her. "How is Hurin?" Rand asked her, arranging his sword so he could sit. "Resting? He insisted on going out," Ingtar answered. "I told him to follow the trail only until he smelled Trollocs. We can follow it from there tomorrow. Or do you want to go after them tonight?" "Ingtar," Rand said uneasily, "I really wasn't trying to take command. I just didn't think." Yet not as nervously as he would have once, Perrin thought. Shadow killer, we're all of us changing. Ingtar did not answer, but only kept staring into the fireplace. "There are some things that interest me greatly, Rand," Perrin said quietly. "One is how you vanished from Ingtar's camp without a trace. Another is how you arrived in Caerhien a week before us. That clerk was very clear on that. You would have had to fly." One of Mat's eggs hit the floor and cracked. He did not look at it, though. He was looking at Rand, and Ingtar had turned around. Loyal pretended to be reading still, but he wore a worried look, and his ears were up in hairy points. Perrin realized he was staring too. "Well, he did not fly," he said. "I don't see any wings. Maybe he has more important things to tell us." Verven shifted her attention to him just for a moment. He managed to meet her eyes, but he was the first to look away. Aes Sedai. Light. Why were we ever fools enough to follow an Aes Sedai? Rand gave him a grateful look too, and Perrin grinned at him. He was not the old Rand. He seemed to have grown into that fancy coat. It looked right on him now. But he was still the boy Perrin had grown up with. Shadow killer. A man the wolves hold in awe. A man who can channel. "I don't mind," Rand said, and told his tale simply. Perrin found himself gaping. Portal stones. Other worlds where the land seemed to shift. Hurin following the trail of where the Dark Friends would be. And a beautiful woman in distress, just like one in a Gleeman's tale. Mat gave a soft, wondering whistle. "And she brought you back. By one of these stones." Rand hesitated for a second. "She must have," he said. "So you see, that's how we got so far ahead of you. When Fane came, Loyal and I managed to steal back the Horn of Valor in the night, and we rode on to Caerhien because I didn't think we could make it past them once they were roused, and I knew Ingtar would keep coming south after them and reach Caerhien eventually." Shadow killer. Rand looked at him, eyes narrowing, and Perrin realized he had spoken the name aloud. Apparently not loud enough for anyone else to hear, though. No one else glanced at him. He found himself wanting to tell Rand about the wolves. "I know about you. It's only fair you know my secret too." But Verin was there. He could not say it in front of her. "Interesting," the Aes Sedai said, a thoughtful expression on her face. "I would very much like to meet this girl. If she can use a portal stone, by Boyce, by Boyce, by Boyce. Even that name is not very widely known." She gave herself a shake. "Well, that is for another time. A tall girl should not be difficult to find in the Caerhienan houses." "Ah, here is our meal." Perrin smelled lamb even before Mistress Tiedra led in a procession bearing trays of food. His mouth watered more for that than for the peas and squash, the carrots and cabbage that came with it, or the hot, crusty rolls. He still found vegetables tasty, but sometimes, of late, he dreamed of red meat, not even cooked usually. It was disconcerting to find himself thinking that the nicely pink slices of lamb that the innkeeper carved were too well done. He firmly took helpings of everything, and 2 of the lamb. It was a quiet meal, with everyone concentrating on his own thoughts. Perrin found it painful to watch Mat eat. Mat's appetite was as healthy as ever, despite the feverish flush to his face, and the way he shoveled food into his mouth made it look like his last meal before dying. Perrin kept his eyes on his plate as much as possible and wished they had never left Emond's Field. After the maids cleared the table and left again, Verin insisted they remain together until Hurin returned. "He may bring word that will mean we must move at once." Mat returned to his juggling and Loyal to his reading. Rand asked the innkeeper if there were any more books, and she brought him The Travels of Jane Farstrider. Perrin liked that one too, with its stories of adventures among the seafolk and journeys to the lands beyond the Aiel Waste, where silk came from. He did not feel like reading, though, so he set up a stones board on the table with Ingtar. The Shianaram played with a slashing, daring style. Perrin had always played doggedly, giving ground reluctantly, but he found himself placing the stones with as much recklessness as Ingtar. Most of the games ended in a draw, but he managed to win as many as Ingtar did. The Shianaran was eyeing him with a new respect by early evening, when the sniffer returned. Hurin's grin was at the same time triumphant and perplexed. "I found them, Lord Ingtar," thought Rand. "I tracked them to their lair." "Lair?" Ingtar said sharply. "You mean they're hiding somewhere close by?" "Aye, Lord Ingtar. The ones who took the horn I followed straight there, and there was Trolloc scent all around the place, though sneaking as if they didn't dare be seen even there." "And no wonder." The sniffer took a deep breath. "It's the great manor Lord Barthane's just finished building." "Lord Barthane's!" Ingtar exclaimed. "But he, by Boyce, he's by Boyce, he's by Boyce. There are dark friends among the high as well as the low," Varan said smoothly. "The mighty give their souls to the shadow as often as the weak." Ingtar scowled as if he did not want to think of that. "There's guards," Hurin went on. "We'll not get in with 20 men, not, and get out again. 100 could do it, but 2 would be better." "That's what I think, my lord." "What about the king?" Mat demanded. "If this Barthane's is a dark friend, the king will help us." "I am quite sure," Verin said dryly, "that Galdrian Riatin would move against Barthane's Damodred on the rumor that Barthane's is a dark friend, and glad of the excuse. I'm also quite sure Galdrian would never let the Horn of Valere out of his grasp once he had it. He would bring it out on feast days to show the people and tell them how great and mighty Caerhien is, and no one would ever see it else." Perrin blinked with shock. "But the Horn of Valere has to be there when the last battle is fought. He couldn't just keep it." "I know little of Caerhien," Ingtar told him, "but I've heard enough of Galdrian. He would feast us and thank us for the glory we had brought to Caerhien. He would stuff our pockets with gold and heap honors on our heads. And if we tried to leave with the horn, he'd cut our honored heads off without pausing to take a breath." Perrin ran a hand through his hair. The more he found out about kings, the less he liked them. "What about the dagger?" Mat asked diffidently. "He wouldn't want that, would he?" Ingtar glared at him and he shifted uncomfortably. "I know the horn is important, but I'm not going to be fighting in the last battle. That dagger? By Boyce. Verin rested her hands on the arms of her chair. "Galdrian shall not have it either. What we need is somewhere inside Barthane's manor house. If we can only find the horn, we may also find a way to take it back." "Yes, Mat, and the dagger. Once it is known that an Aes Sedai is in the city, well, I usually avoid these things, but if I let slip to Tiedra that I would like to see Barthane's new manor, I should have an invitation in a day or 2. It should not be difficult to bring at least some of the rest of you. What is it, Hurin?" The sniffer had been rocking anxiously on his heels from the moment she mentioned an invitation. "Lord Rand already has one, from Lord Barthane's." Perrin stared at Rand, and he was not the only one. Rand pulled 2 sealed parchments from his coat pocket and handed them to the Aes Sedai without a word. Ingtar came to look wonderingly over her shoulder at the seals. Barthane's, and by Boyce, and Galdrian. "Rand, how did you come by these?" "What have you been doing?" "Nothing," Rand said. "I haven't done anything. They just sent them to me." Ingtar let out a long breath. Mat's mouth was hanging open. "Well, they did just send them," Rand said quietly. There was a dignity to him that Perrin did not remember. Rand was looking at the Aes Sedai and the Shianaran Lord as equals. Perrin shook his head. "You are fitting that coat. We're all changing." "Lord Rand burned all the rest," Hurin said. "Every day they came, and every day he burned them. Until these, of course. Every day from mightier houses." He sounded proud. "The wheel of time weaves us all into the pattern as it wills," Verin said, looking at the parchments. "But sometimes it provides what we need before we know we need it." Casually, she crumpled the king's invitation and tossed it into the fireplace, where it lay white on the cold logs. Breaking the other seal with her thumb, she read, "Yes, yes, this will do very well." "How can I go?" Rand asked her. "They will know I'm no lord. I am a shepherd and a farmer." Ingtar looked skeptical. "I am Ingtar. I told you I am." Ingtar shrugged. He still did not look convinced. Hurin stared at Rand with flat disbelief. Burn me, Perrin thought. If I didn't know him, I wouldn't believe it either. Mat was watching Rand with his head tilted, frowning as if looking at something he had never seen before. He sees it too now. "You can do it, Rand," Perrin said. "You can. It will help," Virin said, "if you don't tell everyone what you are not. People see what they expect to see. Beyond that, look them in the eye and speak firmly. The way you've been talking to me," she added dryly, and Rand's cheeks colored, but he did not drop his eyes. "It doesn't matter what you say. They will attribute anything out of place to your being an outlander. It will also help if you remember the way you behaved before the Amelin. If you are that arrogant, they will believe you are a lord if you wear rags." Mat snickered. Rand threw up his hands. "All right, I'll do it. But I still think they will know 5 minutes after I open my mouth." "When?" "Barthanes has asked you for 5 different dates, and one is tomorrow night." "Tomorrow!" Ingtar exploded. "The horn could be 50 miles downriver by tomorrow night, or..." Verin cut him off. "Uno and your soldiers can watch the manor. If they try to take the horn anywhere, we can easily follow and perhaps retrieve it more easily than from inside Barthanes' walls." "Perhaps so," Ingtar agreed grudgingly. "I just do not like to wait, now that the horn is almost in my hands. I will have it. I must. I must." Hurin stared at him. "But, Lord Ingtar, that isn't the way. What happens, happens, and what is meant to be, will." Ingtar's glare cut him off, though he still muttered under his breath, "It isn't the way, talking of must." Ingtar turned back to Verin stiffly. "Aes Sedai, Kerhinin, are very strict in their protocol. If Rand does not send a reply, Barthanes may be so insulted he will not let us in, even with that parchment in our hands. But if Rand does, by Boyce, well, Fane at least knows him. We could be warning them to set a trap. We will surprise them." Her brief smile was not pleasant. "But I think Barthanes will want to see Rand in any case. Dark friend or not, I doubt he has given up plots against the throne. Rand, he says you took an interest in one of the king's projects, but he doesn't say what. What does he mean?" "I don't know," Rand said slowly. "I haven't done anything at all since I arrived." "Wait, maybe he means the statue. We came through a village where they were digging up a huge statue. From the age of legends, they said. The king means to move it to Kerhin, though I don't know how he can move something that big. But all I did was ask what it was. We passed it in the day and did not stop to ask questions." Verin let the invitation fall in her lap. "Not a wise thing for Goldrian to do, perhaps, unearthing that. Not that there is any real danger, but it is never wise for those who don't know what they are doing to meddle with things from the Age of Legends." "What is it?" Rand asked. "A Sa Angreal." She sounded as if it were really not very important, but Perrin suddenly had the feeling the two of them had entered a private conversation, saying things no one else could hear. One of a pair, the 2 largest ever made that we know of, and an odd pair as well. One, still buried on Tremalking, can only be used by a woman. This one can only be used by a man. They were made during the War of the Powers, to be a weapon. But if there is anything to be thankful for in the end of that age or the breaking of the world, it is that the end came before they could be used. Together, they might well be powerful enough to break the world again, perhaps even worse than the first breaking. Perrin's hands tightened to knots. He avoided looking directly at Rand, but even from the corner of his eye he could see a whiteness around Rand's mouth. He thought Rand might be afraid, and he did not blame him a bit. Ingtar looked shaken, as well he might. That thing should be buried again, and as deeply as they can pile dirt and stone. What would have happened if Loghain had found it? Or any wretched man who can channel, let alone one claiming he's the Dragon Reborn. Aes Sedai, you must warn Galdrian what he's doing. What? Oh, there is no need for that, I think. The two must be used in unison to handle enough of the one power to break the world. That was the way in the Age of Legends. A man and a woman working together were always 10 times as strong as they were apart. And what Aes Sedai today would aid a man in channeling. One by itself is powerful enough, but I can think of few women strong enough to survive the flow through the one on Tremalking. The Amilin, of course, Moiraine and Elaida, perhaps 1 or 2 others, and 3 still in training. As for Loghain, it would have taken all his strength simply to keep from being burned to a cinder, with nothing left for doing anything. No, Ingtar, I don't think you need worry. At least not until the real Dragon Reborn proclaims himself, and then we will all have enough to worry about as it is. Let us worry now about what we shall do when we are inside Barthanes' manor. She was talking to Rand. Perrin knew it, and from the queasy look in Mat's eye, he did too. Even Loyal shifted nervously in his chair. Oh, light, Rand, Perrin thought. Light, don't let her use you. Rand's hands were pressing the tabletop so hard that his knuckles were white, but his voice was steady. His eyes never left the Aes Sedai. First we have to take back the horn and the dagger, and then it is done, Verin. Then it is done. Watching Verin's smile, small and mysterious, Perrin felt a chill. He did not think Rand knew half what he thought he did. Not half. Dangerous words. Lord Barthanes' manor crouched like a huge toad in the night, covering as much ground as a fortress, with all its walls and outbuildings. It was no fortress, though, with tall windows everywhere, and lights, and the sounds of music and laughter drifting out, yet Rand saw guards moving on the tower tops and along the roof walks, and none of the windows were close to the ground. He got down from Red's back and smoothed his coat, adjusted his sword belt. The others dismounted around him at the foot of broad, white stone stairs leading up to the wide, heavily carved doors of the manor. 10 Shienarans, under Uno, made an escort. The one-eyed man exchanged small nods with Ingtar before taking his men to join the other escorts, where ale had been provided, and a whole ox was roasting on a spit by a big fire. The other 10 Shienarans had been left behind along with Perrin. Every one of them had to be there for a purpose, Vereen had said, and Perrin had no purpose to serve this night. An escort was necessary for dignity in Caer Hienan eyes, but more than 10 would seem suspicious. Rand was there because he had received the invitation. Ingtar had come to lend the prestige of his title, while Loyal was there because Ogier was sought after in the upper reaches of the Caer Hienan nobility. Húrin pretended to be Ingtar's body servant. His true purpose was to sniff out the dark friends and Trollocs if he could. The Horn of Valere should not be far from them. Mat, still grumbling about it, was pretending to be Rand's servant, since he could feel the dagger when it was close. If Húrin failed, perhaps he could find the dark friends. When Rand had asked Verin why she was there, she had only smiled and said, "To keep the rest of you out of trouble." As they mounted the stairs, Mat muttered, "I still don't see why I have to be a servant." He and Húrin followed behind the others. "Burn me, if Rand can be a lord, I can put on a fancy coat too." "A servant," Verin said, without looking back at him, "can go many places, another man cannot, and many nobles will not even see him. You and Húrin have your tasks. Be quiet now, Mat," Ingtar put in, "unless you want to give us away." They were approaching the doors, where half a dozen guards stood with the tree and crown of House Damodre on their chests, and an equal number of men in dark green livery with tree and crown on the sleeve. Taking a deep breath, Rand proffered the invitation. "I am Lord Rand of House Thor," he said, all in a rush, to get it over with. "And these are my guests. Verin Aes Sedai of the Brown Ajar, Lord Ingtar of House Shinua in Shianar, Loyal, son of Aron, son of Halan, from Stedding Shangtai." Loyal had asked that his Stedding be left out of it, but Verin insisted they needed every bit of formality they could offer. The servant who had reached for the invitation with a perfunctory bow gave a little jerk at each additional name. His eyes popped at Verin's. In a strangled voice he said, "Be welcome in House Damodred, my lords. Be welcome, Aes Sedai. Be welcome, friend Ogier." He waved the other servants to open the doors wide and bowed Rand and the others inside, where he hurriedly passed the invitation to another liveried man and whispered in his ear. This man had the tree and crown large on the chest of his green coat. Aes Sedai, he said, using his long staff to make a bow, almost bending his head to his knees, to each of them in turn. My lords, friend Ogier, I am called Ashin. Please to follow me. The outer hall held only servants, but Ashin led them to a great room filled with nobles, with a juggler performing at one end and tumblers at the other. Voices and music coming from elsewhere said these were not the only guests or the only entertainments. The nobles stood in 2s and 3s and 4s, sometimes men and women together, sometimes only one or the other, always with careful space between, so no one could overhear what was said. The guests wore the dark Kerhinin colours, each with bright stripes at least halfway down his or her chest, and some had them all the way to their waists. The women had their hair piled high in elaborate towers of curls, everyone different, and their dark skirts were so wide they would have had to turn sideways to pass through any doorway narrower than those of the manor. None of the men had the shaved heads of soldiers. They all wore dark velvet hats over long hair, some shaped like bells, others flat, and, as with the women, lace ruffles like dark ivory almost hid their hands. Ashin rapped his staff and announced them in a loud voice, "Verin first." They drew every eye. Verin wore her brown-fringed shawl, embroidered in grapevines. The announcement of an Aes Sedai sent a murmur through the lords and ladies, and made the juggler drop one of his hoops, though no one was watching him any longer. Loyal received almost as many looks even before Ashin spoke his name. Despite the silver embroidery on collar and sleeves, the otherwise unrelieved black of Ram's coat made him seem almost stark beside the Kerhinin, and his and Ingtar's swords drew many glances. None of the lords appeared to be armed. Rand heard the words Heron mark blade more than once. Some of the glances he was receiving looked like frowns. He suspected they came from men he had insulted by burning their invitations. A slim, handsome man approached. He had long greying hair, and multi-hued stripes crossed the front of his deep grey coat from his neck, almost to the hem just above his knees. He was extremely tall for a Kerhinin, no more than half a head shorter than Rand, and he had a way of standing that made him seem even taller, with his chin up so he seemed to be looking down at everyone else. His eyes were black pebbles. He looked warily at Verin, though. "Grace honours me with your presence, Aes Sedai." Barthane's Damodred's voice was deep and sure. His gaze swept across the others. "I did not expect so distinguished a company. Lord Ingtar, friend Ogier." His bow to each was little more than a nod of the head. Barthanes knew exactly how powerful he was. "And you, my young Lord Rand. You excite much comment in the city and in the houses. Perhaps we will have a chance to talk this night." His tone said that he would not miss it if the chance never came, that he had not been excited to any comment, but his eyes slid a fraction before he caught them to Ingtar and Loyal and to Verin. "Be welcome." He let himself be drawn away by a handsome woman who laid a beringed hand buried in lace on his arm, but his gaze drifted back to Rand as he walked away. The murmur of conversation picked up once more, and the juggler spun his hoops again in a narrow loop that almost reached the worked plaster ceiling, a good 4 spans up. The tumblers had never stopped. A woman leaped into the air from the cupped hands of one of her compatriots, her oiled skin shining in the light of 100 lamps as she spun, and landed on her feet on the hands of a man who was already standing atop another's shoulders. He lifted her up on outstretched arms as the man below raised him in the same way, and she spread her arms as if for applause. None of the Kerhinin seemed to notice. Verin and Ingtar drifted into the crowd. The Shianaran received a few wary looks. Some looked at the Aes Sedai with wide eyes, others with the worried frowns of those finding a rabid wolf within arm's reach. The latter came from men more often than women, and some of the women spoke to her. Rand realized that Mat and Hurin had already disappeared to the kitchens, where all the servants who had come with the guests would be gathering until sent for. He hoped they would not have trouble sneaking away. Loyal bent down to speak for his ear alone. "Rand, there is a waygate nearby. I can feel it." "You mean this was an Ogier grove?" Rand said softly, and Loyal nodded. Stedding Sofu had not been found again when it was planted, or the Ogier who helped build Al-Sher Rahi Enalen would not have needed a grove to remind them of the steading. This was all forest when I came through Caerhien before and belonged to the king. Barthanes probably took it away in some plot. Rand looked around the room nervously. Everyone was still talking, but more than a few were watching the Ogier and him. He could not see Ingtar. Verin stood at the center of a knot of women. I wish we could stay together. Verin says not, Rand. She says it would make them all suspicious and angry, thinking we were holding ourselves aloof. We have to allay suspicion until Mat and Hurin find whatever they find. I heard what she said, as well as you, Loyal. But I still say if Barthanes is a Dart friend, then he must know why we're here. Going off by ourselves is just asking to be knocked on the head. Verin says he won't do anything until he finds out whether he can make use of us. Just do what she told us, Rand. Aes Sedai know what they are about. Loyal walked into the crowd, gathering a circle of lords and ladies before he had gone 10 steps. Others started toward Rand now that he was alone, but he turned in the other direction and hurried away. Aes Sedai may know what they're about, but I wish I did. I don't like Liz. Light, but I wish I knew if she was telling the truth. Aes Sedai never lie, but the truth you hear may not be the truth you think it is. He kept moving to avoid talking with the nobles. There were many other rooms, all filled with lords and ladies, all with entertainers. 3 different gleemen in their cloaks, more jugglers and tumblers, and musicians playing flutes, bitterns, dulcimers, and lutes, plus 5 different sizes of fiddle, 6 kinds of horn, straight or curved or curled, and 10 sizes of drum from tambour to kettle. He gave some of the horn players a second look, those with curled horns, but the instruments were all plain brass. They wouldn't have the Horn of Valoray out here, fool, he thought. Not unless Barthanes means to have dead heroes come as part of the entertainment. There was even a bard in silver-worked Tyren boots and a yellow coat, strolling through the rooms, plucking his harp, and sometimes stopping to declaim in high chant. He glared contemptuously at the gleeman and did not linger in the rooms where they were, but Rand saw little difference between him and them, except for their clothes. Suddenly Barthanes was walking by Rand's side. A liveried servant immediately offered his silver tray with a bow. Barthanes took a blown-glass goblet of wine. Walking backwards ahead of them, still bowing, the servant held the tray toward Rand until Rand shook his head, then melted into the crowd. "You seem restless," Barthanes said, sipping. "I like to walk." Rand wondered how to follow Verin's advice, and remembering what she had said about his visit to the Amelin, he settled into Cat Crosses the courtyard. He knew no more arrogant way to walk than that. Barthanes' mouth tightened, and Rand thought perhaps the Lord found it too arrogant, but Verin's advice was all he had to go by, so he did not stop. "To take some of the edge off," he said pleasantly, "this is a fine party. You have many friends, and I've never seen so many entertainers." "Many friends," Barthanes agreed. "You can tell Galdrian how many and who. Some of the names might surprise him. I have never met the king, Lord Barthanes, and I don't expect I ever will. Of course. You just happened to be in that Fleisbeck village. You were not checking on the progress of retrieving that statue. A great undertaking, that. Yes." He had begun thinking of Verin again, wishing she had given him some advice on how to talk with a man who assumed he was lying. He added, without thinking, "It's dangerous to meddle with things from the Age of Legends if you don't know what you are doing." Barthanes peered into his wine, musing as if Rand had just said something profound. "Are you saying you do not support Galdrian in this?" he asked finally. "I told you I've never met the king." "Yes, of course. I did not know Anne Dorman played at the great game so well. We do not see many here in Caerhien." Rand took a deep breath to stop from telling the man angrily that he was not playing their game. "There are many grain barges from Andor in the river, merchants and traders. Who notices such as they? As well notice the beetles on the leaves." Barthanes' voice carried equal contempt for both beetles and merchants, but once again he frowned as if Rand had hinted at something. "Not many men travel in company with Aes Sedai. You seem too young to be a warder. I suppose Lord Ingtar is Verin Sedai's warder." "We are who we said we are," Rand said, and grimaced. "Except me." Barthanes was studying Rand's face almost openly. Young to carry a heron-mark blade. "I'm less than a year old," Rand said automatically, and immediately wished he had it back. It sounded foolish to his ear, but Verin had said act as he had, with the Amelin seat, and that was the answer Lan had given him. A borderman considered the day he was given his sword to be his name day. So, an Andorman, and yet borderland trained. Or is it warder trained? Barthane's eyes narrowed, studying Rand. I understand Morghese has only one son, named Goyin, I have heard. You must be much like him in age. I have met him, Rand said cautiously. Those eyes, that hair. I've heard the Andorran royal line has almost Aiel colouring in their hair and eyes. Rand stumbled, though the floor was smooth marble. I'm not Aiel, Lord Barthanes, and I'm not of the royal line either. As you say, you have given me much to think on. I believe we may find common ground when we talk again. Barthanes nodded and raised his glass in a small salute, then turned to speak to a grey-haired man with many stripes of colour down his coat. Rand shook his head and moved on, away from more conversation. It had been bad enough talking to one Kehinin lord he did not want to risk two. Barthanes appeared to find deep meanings in the most trivial comments. Rand realized he had just now learned enough of Deus Daemar to know he had no idea at all how it was played. Mat, Hurin, find something fast, so we can get out of here. These people are crazy. And then he entered another room, and the gleeman at the end of it, strumming his harp and reciting a tale from The Great Hunt of the Horn, was Tom Merrilin. Rand stopped, dead. Tom did not seem to see him, though the gleeman's gaze passed over him twice. It seemed that Tom had meant what he said, a clean break. Rand turned to go, but a woman stepped smoothly in front of him and put a hand on his chest, the lace falling back from a soft wrist. Her head did not quite come to his shoulder, but her tall array of curls easily reached as high as his eyes. The high neck of her gown put lace ruffles under her chin, and stripes covered the front of her dark blue dress below her breasts. I am Elaine Chuliandrad, and you are the famous Rand or Thor. In Barthanes' own manner, I suppose he has the right to speak to you first, but we are all fascinated by what we hear of you. I even hear that you play the flute. Can it be true? I play the flute. How did she, by Boyce, Caldevwin, light? Everybody does hear everything in Kehien. If you will excuse. I have heard that some outland lords play music, but I never believed it. I would like very much to hear you play. Perhaps you will talk with me of this and that. Barthanes seemed to find your conversation fascinating. My husband spends his days sampling his own vineyards and leaves me quite alone. He is never there to talk with me. You must miss him, Rand said, trying to edge around her in her wide skirts. She gave a tinkling laugh as if he had said the funniest thing in the world. Another woman sidled in beside the first, and another hand was laid on his chest. She wore as many stripes as Elaine, and they were of an age, a good 10 years older than he. Do you think to keep him to yourself, Elaine? The two women smiled at each other while their eyes threw daggers. The second turned her smile on Rand. I am Belivere Osielin. Are all Andorman so tall? And so handsome? He cleared his throat. Ah, by Boyce, some are as tall. Pardon me, but if you will, I saw you talking with Barthanes. They say you know Galdrian as well. You must come to see me and talk. My husband is visiting our estates in the south. You have the subtlety of a tavern wench, Elaine hissed at her, and immediately was smiling up at Rand. She has no polish. No man could like a woman with a manner so rough. Bring your flute to my manor, and we will talk. Perhaps you will teach me to play? What Elaine thinks of as subtlety, Belivere said sweetly, is but lack of courage. A man who wears a heron-marked sword must be brave. That truly is a heron-marked blade, is it not? Rand tried backing away from them. If you will just excuse me, I... They followed step for step until his back hit the wall. The width of their skirts together made another wall in front of him. He jumped as a third woman crowded in beside the other two, her skirts joining theirs to the wall on that side. She was older than they, but just as pretty, with an amused smile that did not lessen the sharpness of her eyes. She wore half again as many stripes as Elaine and Belivere. They made tiny curtsies and glared at her sullenly. Are these two spiders trying to toil you in their webs? The older woman laughed. Half the time they tangle themselves more firmly than anyone else. Come with me, my fine young Andorran, and I will tell you some of the troubles they would give you. For one thing, I have no husband to worry about. Husbands always make trouble. Over Elaine's head he could see Tom, straightening from a bow to no applause or notice whatsoever. With a grimace, the gleeman snatched a goblet from the tray of a startled servant. "I see someone I must speak to," Rand told the women, and squeezed out of the box they had put him in just as the last woman reached for his arm. All three stared after him as he hurried to the gleeman. Tom eyed him over the lip of the goblet, then took another long swallow. "Tom, I know you said a clean break, but I had to get away from those women. All they wanted to talk about was their husbands being away, but they were already hinting at other things." Tom choked on his wine, and Rand slapped his back. "You drink too fast, and something always goes down the wrong way. Tom, they think I am plotting with Barthanes, or maybe Galdrian, and I don't think they will believe me when I say I'm not. I just needed an excuse to leave them." Tom stroked his long moustaches with one knuckle and peered across the room at the three women. They were still standing together, watching Rand and him. "I recognize those three, boy. Breen Taborwin alone would give you an education such as every man should have at least once in his life, if he can live through it. Worried about their husbands? I like that, boy." Abruptly his eyes sharpened. "You told me you were clear of Aes Sedai. Half the talk here tonight is of the Andorran lord appearing with no warning, and an Aes Sedai at his side. Barthanes and Galdrian. You've let the White Tower put you in the cooking pot this time. She only came yesterday, Tom. And as soon as the horn is safe, I'll be free of them again. I mean to see to it." "You sound as if it isn't safe now," Tom said slowly. "You didn't sound that way before. Dark friends stole it, Tom. They brought it here. Barthanes is one of them." Tom seemed to study his wine, but his eyes darted to make sure no one was close enough to listen. More than the three women were watching them with sideways glances while pretending to talk among themselves, but every knot maintained its distance from every other. Still, Tom spoke softly. "A dangerous thing to say if it isn't true, and more dangerous if it is. An accusation like that against the most powerful man in the kingdom. By Boyce, by Boyce, by Boyce. You say he has the horn? I suppose you're after my help again now that you're tangled with the White Tower once more." No, he had decided Tom had been right, even if the gleeman did not know why. He could not involve anyone else in his troubles. "I just wanted to get away from those women." The gleeman blew out his moustaches, taken aback. "Well, yes, that is well. The last time I helped you, I got a limp out of it, and you seem to have let yourself be tied to Tar Valon's strings again. You'll have to get yourself out of it this time." He sounded as if he were trying to convince himself. "I will, Tom. I will. Just as soon as the horn is safe and Matt has that bloody dagger back. Matt, Hurin, where are you?" As if the thought had been a summons, Hurin appeared in the room, eyes searching among the lords and ladies. They looked through him. Servants did not exist unless needed. When he found Rand and Tom, he made his way between the small clusters of nobles and bowed to Rand. "My lord, I was sent to tell you. Your manservant had a fall and twisted his knee." "I don't know how bad, my lord." For a moment Rand stared before he understood. Conscious of all the eyes on him, he spoke loudly enough for the nobles closest to overhear. "Clumsy fool. What good is he to me if he can't walk? I suppose I'd better come see how badly he's hurt himself." It seemed to be the right thing to say. Hurin sounded relieved when he bowed again and said, "As my lord wishes. If my lord will follow me." "You play very well at being a lord," Tom said softly. "But remember this. Kerhinin may play Deus Daemar, but it was the White Tower made the great game in the first place. Watch yourself, boy." With a glare at the nobles, he set his empty goblet on the tray of a passing servant and strode away, plucking his harp. He began reciting Goodwife Millie and the Silk Merchant. "Lead on, man," Rand told Hurin, feeling foolish. As he followed the sniffer out of the room, he could feel the eyes following him. "A message from the dark. Have you found it?" Rand asked as he followed Hurin down a cramped flight of stairs. The kitchens lay on the lower levels, and the servants who had come attending the guests had all been sent there. "Or is Matt really hurt?" "Oh, Matt's fine, Lord Rand." The sniffer frowned. "At least he sounds all right, and he grumbles like a hailman. I didn't mean to worry you, but I needed a reason for you to come below. I found the trail easy enough. The men who set fire to the inn all entered a walled garden behind the manor. Trollocs joined them, went into the garden with them. Sometime yesterday, I think, maybe even night before last. He hesitated. Lord Rand, they didn't come out again. They must still be in there. At the foot of the stairs, the sounds of the servants enjoying themselves drifted down the hall, laughter and singing. Someone had a bittern, strumming a raucous tune to clapping and the thump of dancing. There was no worked plaster or fine tapestries here, only bare stone and plain wood. Light in the halls came from rush torches, smoking the ceiling, and spread far enough apart that the light faded between them. "I'm glad you're talking to me naturally again," Rand said. "The way you have been bowing and scraping, I was beginning to think you were more Caerhinin than the Caerhinin." Hurin's face coloured. "Well, as to that, by Boyce. He glanced down the hall toward the noise and looked as if he wanted to spit. "They all pretend to be so proper, but by Boyce. Lord Rand, every one of them says he's loyal to his master or mistress, but they all hint they're willing to sell what they know or have heard. And when they have a few drinks in them, they'll tell you, all whispering in your ear, things about the lords and ladies they serve that'd fair make your hair stand on end. I know they're Caerhinin, but I never heard of such goings-on. We will be out of here soon, Hurin." Rand hoped it was true. "Where is this garden?" Hurin turned down a side hall leading toward the back of the manor. "Did you bring Ingtar and the others down already?" The sniffer shook his head. Lord Ingtar had let himself be cornered by 6 or 7 of those who call themselves ladies. I couldn't get close enough to speak to him. And Aes Sedai was with Barthanes. She gave me such a look when I came near, I never even tried to tell her. They rounded another corner just then, and there were Loyal and Matt, the Ogier, standing a little stooped for the lower ceiling. Loyal's grin almost split his face. "There you are. Rand, I was never so glad to get away from anyone as from those people upstairs. They kept asking me if the Ogier were coming back, and if Galdrian had agreed to pay what was owed. It seems the reason all the Ogier stonemasons left is because Galdrian stopped paying them, except with promises. I kept telling them I didn't know anything about it, but half of them seemed to think that I was lying, and the other half that I was hinting at something. We'll be out of here soon," Rand assured him. "Matt, are you all right?" His friend's face looked more hollow-cheeked than he remembered, even back at the inn, and his cheekbones more prominent. "I feel fine," Matt said grumpily, "but I certainly didn't have any trouble leaving the other servants. The ones who weren't asking if you starved me thought I was sick and didn't want to come too close. Have you sensed the dagger?" Rand asked. Matt shook his head glumly. "The only thing I've sensed is that somebody is watching me, most of the time. These people are as bad as Fades for sneaking around. Burn me, I nearly jumped out of my skin when Hurin told me he'd located the Dart Friends' trail. Rand, I can't feel it at all, and I'd been through this bloody building from rafters to basement. That does not mean it isn't here, Matt. I put it in the chest with the horn, remember? Maybe that keeps you from feeling it. I don't think Fane knows how to open it, else he'd not have gone to the trouble of carrying the weight when he fled Faldara. Even that much gold isn't important beside the horn of Valer. When we find the horn, we will find the dagger. You'll see. As long as I don't have to pretend to be your servant anymore," Matt muttered. "As long as you don't go mad and... by Boyce. He let the words die with a twist of his mouth. "Rand is not mad, Matt," Loyal said. "The Caerhinin would never have let him in here if he were not a lord. They are the ones who are mad." "I'm not mad," Rand said harshly. "Not yet. Hurin, show me this garden. This way, Lord Rand." They went out into the night by a small door that Rand had to duck to get through. Loyal was forced to bend over and hunch his shoulders. There was enough light in yellow pools from the windows above for Rand to make out brick walks between square flower beds. The shadows of stables and other outbuildings bulked in the darkness to either side. Occasional fragments of music drifted out, from the servants below or from those entertaining their masters above. Hurin led them along the walks until even the dim glow failed, and they made their way by moonlight alone, their boots crunching softly on the brick. Bushes that would have been bright with flowers by daylight now made strange humps in the dark. Ram fingered his sword and did not let his eyes stay on any one spot too long. 100 Trollocs could be hiding around them unseen. He knew Hurin would have smelled Trollocs if they were there, but that did not help a great deal. If Barthanes was a dark friend, then at least some of his servants and guards had to be too, and Hurin could not always smell a dark friend. Dark friends leaping out of the night would not be much better than Trollocs. "There, Lord Rand," Hurin whispered, pointing. Ahead, stone walls not much higher than Loyal's head enclosed a square, perhaps 50 paces on a side. Rand could not be sure in the shadows, but it looked as if the gardens stretched on beyond the walls. He wondered why Barthanes had built a walled enclosure in the middle of his garden. No roof showed above the wall. Why would they go in there and stay? Loyal bent to put his mouth close to Rand's ear. "I told you this was all an Ogier grove once. Rand, the waygate is within that wall. I can feel it." Rand heard Matt sigh despairingly. "We can't give up, Matt," he said. "I'm not giving up. I just have enough brains not to want to travel the ways again." "We may have to," Rand told him. "Go find Ingtar and Verin. Get them alone somehow, I don't care how, and tell them I think Fane has taken the horn through a waygate. Just don't let anyone else hear. And remember to limp. You are supposed to have had a fall." It was a wonder to him that even Fane would risk the ways, but it seemed the only answer. They wouldn't spend a day and a night just sitting in there, without a roof over their heads. Matt swept a low bow, and his voice was heavy with sarcasm. "At once, my lord. As my lord wishes. Shall I carry your banner, my lord?" He started back for the manor, his grumbles fading away. "Now I have to limp. Next it'll be a broken neck. Or, by Boyce. "He's just worried about the dagger, Rand," Loyal said. "I know," Rand said. "But how long before he tells somebody what I am, not even meaning to?" He could not believe Matt would betray him on purpose. There was that much of their friendship left, at least. "Loyal, boost me up where I can see over the wall. Rand, if the Dark Friends are still, they aren't. Boost me up, Loyal." The three of them moved close to the wall, and Loyal made a stirrup with his hands for Rand's foot. The Ogier straightened easily with the weight, lifting Rand's head just high enough to see over the top of the wall. The thin, waning moon gave little light, and most of the area was in shadow, but there did not seem to be any flowers or shrubs inside the walled square. Only a lone bench of pale marble, placed as if one man might sit on it to stare at what stood in the middle of the space, like a huge, upright stone slab. Rand caught the top of the wall and pulled himself up. Loyal gave a low hiss and grabbed at his foot, but he jerked free and rolled over the wall, dropping inside. There was close-cropped grass under his feet. He thought vaguely that Barthanes must let sheep in, at least. Staring at the shadowed stone slab, the waygate, he was startled to hear boots thump to the ground beside him. Hurin climbed to his feet, dusting himself off. "You should be careful doing that, Lord Rand. Could be anybody hiding in here." Or anything. He peered into the darkness within the walls, feeling at his belt as if for the short sword and swordbreaker he had had to leave at the inn. Servants did not go armed in Cairhien. Jump in a hole without looking, and there'll be a snake in it every time. "You would smell them," Rand said. "Maybe." The sniffer inhaled deeply. "But I can only smell what they've done, not what they intend." There was a scraping sound from over Rand's head, and then Loyal was letting himself down from the wall. The Ogier did not even have to straighten his arms completely before his boots touched the ground. "Rash," he muttered. "You humans are always so rash and hasty, and now you have me doing it. Elder Haemon would speak to me severely, and my mother. By Boyce. The darkness hid his face, but Rand was sure his ears were twitching vigorously. "Rand, if you don't start being a little careful, you're going to get me in trouble." Rand walked to the waygate, walked all the way around it. Even close up it looked like nothing more than a thick square of stone, taller than he was. The back was smooth and cool to the touch. He only brushed his hand against it quickly, but the front had been carved by an artist's hands. Vines, leaves and flowers covered it, each so finely done that in the dim moonlight they seemed almost real. He felt the ground in front of it. The grass had been scraped partly away in two arcs, such as those gates would make in opening. "Is that a waygate?" Hurin asked uncertainly. "I've heard tell of them, of course, but by Boyce. He sniffed the air. "The trail goes right to it and stops, Lord Rand. How are we going to follow them now? I've heard if you go through a waygate you come out mad, if you come out at all. It can be done, Hurin. I've done it, and Loyal, and Matt, and Perrin." Rand never took his eyes from the tangles of leaves on the stone. There was one unlike any other carved there, he knew. The trefoil leaf of fabled Avendasora, the tree of life. He put his hand on it. I'll bet you can smell their trail along the ways. We can follow anywhere they can run. It would not hurt to prove to himself that he could make himself step through a waygate. I'll prove it to you, he heard Hurin groan. The leaf was worked in the stone just as the others were, but it came away in his hand. Loyal groaned too. In an instant the illusion of living plants seemed suddenly real. Stone leaves appeared to stir with a breeze, flowers appeared to have color even in the dark. Down the center of the mass a line appeared, and the two halves of the slab swung slowly toward Rand. He stepped back to let them open. He did not find himself looking at the other side of the walled square, but neither did he see the dull silver reflection he remembered. The space between the opening gates was a black so dark it seemed to make the night around it lighter. The pitch blackness oozed out between the still-moving gates. Rand leaped back with a shout, dropping the Avendasora leaf in his haste, and Loyal cried out, "Machine Shin!" The black wind. The sound of wind filled their ears. The grass stirred in ripples toward the walls, and dirt swirled up, sucked into the air. And in the wind 1,000 insane voices seemed to cry, 10,000 overlapping, drowning each other. Rand could make out some of them, though he tried not to. By voice, by voice, by voice. Blood so sweet to drink the blood that drips, drips, drops, so red. Pretty eyes, fine eyes, I have no eyes. Pluck the eyes from out of your head, grind your bones, split your bones inside your flesh, suck your marrow while you scream, 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 singing screams, sing your screams. By voice, by voice, by voice. And worst of all, a whispering thread through all the rest. All Thor, all Thor, all Thor. Rand found the void around him and embraced it, never minding the tantalizing, sickening glow of Saidin just out of his sight. Greatest of all the dangers along the ways was the black wind that took the souls of those it killed and drove mad those it let live, but Mashinshin was a part of the ways, it could not leave them. Only it was flowing into the night, and the black wind called his name. The waygate was not yet fully open. If they could only put the Avendasora leaf back. By voice, by voice, by voice. He saw Loyal scrambling on his hands and knees, fumbling and searching the grass in the darkness. Saidin filled him. He felt as if his bones were vibrating, felt the red-hot, ice-cold flow of the one power, felt truly alive as he never was without it, felt the oil-slick taint. By voice, by voice, by voice, no. And silently he screamed back at himself from beyond the emptiness, "It's coming for you. It'll kill all of us." He hurled it all at the black bulge, standing out a full span from the waygate now. He did not know what it was that he hurled or how, but in the heart of that darkness bloomed a coruscating fountain of light. The black wind shrieked 10,000 wordless howls of agony. Slowly giving way inch by reluctant inch, the bulge lessened. Slowly the oozing reversed, back into the still open waygate. The power raced through Rand in a torrent. He could feel the link between himself and Saidin, like a river in flood. Between himself and the pure fire blazing in the heart of the black wind, a raging cataract. The heat inside him went to white heat and beyond, to a shimmer that would have melted stone and vaporized steel and made the air burst into flame. The cold grew till the breath in his lungs should have frozen solid and hard as metal. He could feel it overwhelming him, feel life eroding like a soft clay riverbank, feel what was him wearing away. Can't stop if it gets out. By voice, by voice, by voice. Have to kill it. I cannot stop. Desperately he clung to fragments of himself. The one power roared through him. He rode it like a chip of wood in rapids. The void began to melt and flow. The emptiness steamed with freezing cold. The motion of the waygate halted and reversed. Rand stared, sure, in the dim thoughts floating outside the void, that he was only seeing what he wanted to see. The gates drifted closer together, pushing back machine shin, as if the black wind had solid substance. The inferno still roared in its breast. With a vague, distant wondering, Rand saw Loyal, still on hands and knees, backing away from the closing gates. The gap narrowed, vanished. The leaves and vines merged into a solid wall and were stone. Rand felt the link between him and the fire snap, the flow of power through him cease. A moment more and it would have swept him away completely. Shaking, he dropped to his knees. It was still there inside. Side in, no longer flowing, but there, in a pool. He was a pool of the one power. He trembled with it. He could smell the grass, the dirt beneath, the stone of the walls. Even in the darkness he could see each blade of grass, separate and whole, all of them at once. He could feel each minute stirring of the air on his face. His tongue curdled with the taste of the taint, his stomach knotted and spasmed. Frantically he clawed his way out of the void, still on his knees, not moving, he fought free. And then all that was left was the fading foulness on his tongue, and the cramping in his stomach, and the memory, so alive. "You saved us, Builder." Hurin had his back pressed against the wall, and his voice was hoarse. That thing that was the black wind, it was worse than, was it going to hurl that fire at us? Lord Rand, did it harm you? Did it touch you? He came running as Rand got to his feet, helping him the last bit. Loyal was getting up too, dusting his hands at his knees. "We'll never follow Fane through that." Rand touched Loyal's arm. "Thank you. You did save us. You saved me at least. It was killing me, and it felt wonderful." He swallowed, a faint trace of the taste still coated his mouth. "I want something to drink." "I only found the leaf and put it back," Loyal said, shrugging. "It seemed that if we could not get the waygate closed, it would kill us. I'm afraid I'm not a very good hero, Rand. I was so afraid I could hardly think." "We were both afraid," Rand said. "We may be a poor pair of heroes, but we are what there is. It's a good thing Ingtar is with us." "Lord Rand," Hurin said diffidently, "could we leave now?" The sniffer made a fuss about Rand going over the wall first, with not knowing who was waiting outside, until Rand pointed out that he had the only weapon among them. Even then, Hurin did not seem to like letting Loyal lift Rand to catch the top of the wall and pull himself over. Rand landed on his feet with a thud, listening and peering into the night. For a moment he thought he saw something move, heard a boot scrape on the brick walk, but neither was repeated, and he dismissed it as nervousness. He thought that he had a right to be nervous. He turned to help Hurin down. "Lord Rand," the sniffer said as soon as his feet were solidly on the ground, "how are we going to follow them now? From what I've heard of those things, the whole lot of them could be halfway across the world by now, in any direction. Verin will know a way." Rand suddenly wanted to laugh, to find the horn and the dagger. If they could be found now, he had to go back to the Aes Sedai. They had let him loose, and now he had to go back. "I won't let Mat die without trying." Loyal joined them, and they went back toward the manor to be met at the small door by Mat, who opened it just as Rand reached for the handle. "Verin says you're not to do anything. If Hurin's found where the horn is kept, then she says that's all we can do now. She says we'll leave as soon as you come back and make a plan. And I say this is the last time I go running back and forth with messages. If you want to say something to somebody, you can talk to them yourself from now on." Mat peered past them into the darkness. "Is the horn out there somewhere? In an outbuilding? Did you see the dagger?" Rand turned him around and got him back inside. "It isn't in an outbuilding, Mat. I hope Verin has a good idea of what to do now. I don't have any." Mat looked as if he wanted to ask questions, but he let himself be pushed along the dimly lit corridor. He even remembered to limp as they started upstairs. When Rand and the others re-entered the rooms filled with nobles, they received a number of looks. Rand wondered if they somehow knew something of what had happened outside, or if he should have sent Hurin and Mat to the front hall to wait. But then he realized the looks were no different from what they had been before, curious and calculating, wondering what the Lord and the Ogier had been up to. Servants were invisible to these people. No one tried to approach them since they were together. It seemed there were protocols to conspiracy in the great game. Anyone might try to listen to a private conversation, but they would not intrude on it. Verin and Ingtar were standing together, and thus also alone. Ingtar looked a little dazed. Verin gave Rand and the other three a brief glance, frowned at their expressions, then resettled her shawl and started for the entry hall. As they reached it, Barthanes appeared as if someone had told him they were leaving. "You go so soon?" "Aes Sedai, can I not entreat you to stay longer?" Vereen shook her head. "We must go, Lord Barthanes. I've not been in Caerhien in some years. I was glad of your invitation to young Rand. It has been. By Boyce. Interesting. Then, Grace, see you safely to your inn. The great tree, is it not? Perhaps you'll favour me with your presence again? You would honour me, Aes Sedai, and you, Lord Rand, and you, Lord Ingtar, not to mention you, loyal son of Arant, son of Halan." His bow was a little deeper for the Aes Sedai than for the others, but still no more than a slight inclination. Verin nodded in acknowledgment. "Perhaps. The light illumine you, Lord Barthanes." She turned for the doors. As Rand moved to follow the others, Barthanes caught his sleeve with 2 fingers, holding him back. Mat looked as if he might stay too until Hurin pulled him to join Verin and the rest. "You wade even deeper in the game than I thought," Barthanes said softly. "When I heard your name, I could not believe it, yet you came and you fit the description, and by Boyce, I was given a message for you. I think I will deliver it after all." Rand had felt a prickling along his backbone as Barthanes spoke, but at the last he stared. "A message? From whom?" "Lady Selene. A man. Not the sort for whom I would usually carry messages, but he has. By Boyce, certain. By Boyce, claims on me that I cannot ignore. He gave no name, but he was a Lugarda." "Ah, you know him. I know him." "Fane left a message." Rand looked around the wide hall. Mat and Verin and the others were waiting by the doors. Liveried servants stood stiffly along the walls, ready to leap at a command, yet appearing neither to hear nor see. The sounds of the gathering floated from deeper in the manor. It did not look like a place where dark friends might attack. "What message?" "He says he will wait for you on Toman Head. He has what you seek, and if you want it, you must follow. If you refuse to follow him, he says he will hound your blood and your people and those you love until you will face him." It sounds mad, of course, a man like that saying he will hound a lord, and yet there was something about him. "I think he is mad. He even denied you are a lord, as any eye can plainly see, but there is still something. What is it he carries with him with Trollocs to guard it? What is it you seek?" Barthanes seemed shocked at the directness of his own questions. "The light illumine you, Lord Barthanes." Rand managed to bow, but his legs wobbled as he joined Verin and the others. "He wants me to follow, and he'll hurt Emond's Field, Tam, if I don't. He had no doubt Fane could do it, would do it. At least Egwene is safe in the White Tower." He had sickening images of Trollocs descending in hordes on Emond's Field, of eyeless Fades stalking Egwene. "But how can I follow him? How?" Then he was out in the night, mounting Red. Verin and Ingtar and the others were all already on their horses, and the escort of Shienarans was closing round them. "What did you find?" Verin demanded. "Where does he keep it?" Hurin cleared his throat loudly, and Loyal shifted in his high saddle. The Aes Sedai peered at them. "Fane has taken the horn to Tommen Head through a waygate," Ram said dully. "By this time, he's probably already waiting there for me." "We will speak of this later," Verin said, so firmly that no one spoke at all on the ride back to the city, to the great tree. Uno left them there, after a quiet word from Ingtar, taking the soldiers back to their inn in the foregate. Hurin took one look at Verin's set face by the light of the common room, muttered something about ale, and scurried to a table in a corner, alone. The Aes Sedai brushed aside the innkeeper's solicitous hopes that she had enjoyed herself, and silently led Rand and the rest to the private dining room. Perrin looked up from the travels of Jane Fastrider when they walked in, and frowned when he saw their faces. "It didn't go well, did it?" he said, closing the leather-bound book. Lamps and beeswax candles around the room gave a good light. Mistress Tiedra charged heavily, but she did not stint. Verin carefully folded her shawl and laid it across the back of a chair. "Tell me again." "The dark friends took the horn through a waygate." "At Barthanes' manor. The ground under the manor used to be an ogier grove," Loyal explained. "When we built, by Boyce. His voice trailed off and his ears wilted under her look. Hurin followed them right to it. Rand wearily threw himself into a chair. I have to follow more than ever now, but how? I opened it to show him he could still follow the trail wherever they went, and the Black Wind was there. It tried to reach us, but Loyal managed to close the gates before it could come all the way out. He colored a little at that, but Loyal had closed the gates, and for all he knew, Seanchan might have made it out without that. It was standing guard. The Black Wind, Matt breathed, frozen halfway into a chair. Perrin was staring at Rand, too. So were Vereen and Ingtar. Matt dropped into the chair with a thump. You must be mistaken, Vereen said at last. Seanchan could not be used as a guard. No one can constrain the Black Wind to do anything. It's a creature of the Dark One, Matt said numbly. They're dark friends. Maybe they knew how to ask it for help or make it help. No one knows exactly what Seanchan is, Vereen said, unless perhaps it is the essence of madness and cruelty. It cannot be reasoned with, Matt, or bargained with, or talked to. It cannot even be forced, not by any Aes Sedai living today, and perhaps not by any who ever lived. Do you really think Padan Fain could do what 10 Aes Sedai could not? Matt shook his head. There was an air of despair in the room, of hope and purpose lost. The goal they had sought had vanished, and even Vereen's face wore a floundering expression. I'd never have thought Fain had the courage for the ways. Ingtar sounded almost mild, but suddenly he banged his fist against the wall. I do not care how, or even if, Seanchan works on Fain's behalf. They have taken the Horn of Valere into the ways, Aes Sedai. By now they could be in the Blight, or halfway to Ter, or Tanchico, or the other side of the Aiel Waste. The Horn is lost. I am lost. His hands dropped to his sides, and his shoulders slumped. I am lost. Fain is taking it to Tommen Head, Rand said, and was immediately the object of all eyes again. Vereen studied him narrowly. You said that before. How do you know? He left a message with Barthanes, Rand said. A trick, Ingtar sneered. He'd not tell us where to follow. I don't know what the rest of you are going to do, Rand said, but I'm going to Tommen Head. I have to. I leave at first light. But Rand, Loyal said, it will take us months to reach Tommen Head. What makes you think Fain will wait there for us? He will wait. But how long before he decides I'm not coming? Why did he set that guard if he wants me to follow? Loyal, I mean to ride as hard as I can, and if I ride Red to death, I'll buy another horse, or steal another if I have to. Are you sure you want to come? I've stayed with you this long, Rand. Why would I stop now? Loyal pulled out his pipe and pouch and began thumbing tabac into the big bowl. You see, I like you. I would like you even if you weren't Tavrain. Maybe I like you despite it. You do seem to get me neck deep in hot water. In any case, I am going with you. He sucked on the pipe stem to test the draw, then took a splinter from the stone jar on the mantel and thrust it into a candle flame for a light. And I don't think you can really stop me. Well, I'm going, Matt said. Fain still has that dagger, so I'm going. But all that servant business ended tonight. Perrin sighed, an introspective look in his yellow eyes. I suppose I'll come along too. After a moment he grinned. Somebody has to keep Matt out of trouble. Not even a clever trick, Ingtar muttered. Somehow I'll get Barthanes alone, and I will learn the truth. I mean to have the Horn of Valere, not chase Jack-o'-the-Wisps. It may not be a trick, Vereen said carefully, seeming to study the floor under her toes. There were certain things left in the dungeons at Faldara, writings that indicated a connection between what happened that night and... She gave Rand a quick glance under lowered brows. Tommen Head! I still do not understand them completely, but I believe we must go to Tommen Head. And I believe we will find the horn there. Even if they are going to Tommen Head, Ingtar said, by the time we reach it, Fain or one of the other Dark Friends could have blown the horn 100 times, and the heroes returned from the grave will ride for the shadow. Fain could have blown the horn 100 times since leaving Faldara, Vereen told him. And I think he would have, if he could open the chest. What we must worry about is that he might find someone who does know how to open it. We must follow him along the ways. Perrin's head came up sharply, and Matt shifted in his chair. Loyal gave a low moan. Even if we could somehow sneak past Barthanes' guards, Rand said, I think we'll find Seanchan still there. We cannot use the ways. How many of us could sneak onto Barthanes' grounds? Beren said dismissively. There are other waygates. Steading Tufu lies not far from the city, south and east. It is a young steading, rediscovered only perhaps 600 years ago, but the Ogier elders were still growing the ways then. Steading Sofu will have a waygate. It is there, and we will ride at first light. Loyal made a slightly louder sound, and Rand was not sure whether it referred to the waygate or the steading. Ingtar still did not seem convinced, but Verin was as smooth and as implacable as snow sliding down a mountainside. You will have your soldiers ready to ride, Ingtar. Send Hurin to tell Uno before he goes to bed. I think we should all go to bed as soon as possible. These dark friends have gained at least a day on us already, and I mean to make up as much of it as I can tomorrow. So firm was the plump Aes Sedai's manner that she was already herding Ingtar to the door before she finished speaking. Rand followed the others out, but at the door he stopped beside the Aes Sedai and watched Mat heading down the candlelit hall. Why does he look like that? He asked her. I thought you healed him, enough to give him some time anyway. She waited until Mat and the others had turned up the stairs before speaking. Apparently, it did not work so well as we believed. The sickness takes an interesting course in him. His strength remains. He will keep that to the end, I think. But his body wastes away. Another few weeks, at most, I would say. You see, there is reason for haste. I do not need another spur, Aes Sedai, Rand said, making the title sound hard. Mat, the horn, feigns threat. Light, Egwene. Burn me, I don't need another spur. And what of you, Rand al'Thor? Do you feel well? Do you fight it still, or have you yet surrendered to the wheel? I ride with you to find the horn, he told her. Beyond that, there is nothing between me and any Aes Sedai. Do you understand me? Nothing. She did not speak, and he walked away from her, but when he turned to take the stairs, she was still watching him, dark eyes, sharp and considering.
The wheel weaves. The first light of morning already pearled the sky by the time Tom Merrilin found himself trudging back to the bunch of grapes. Even where the halls and taverns lay thickest, there was a brief time when the foregate lay quiet, gathering its breath. In his present mood, Tom would not have noticed if the empty street had been on fire. Some of Barthanes' guests had insisted on keeping him long after most had gone, long after Barthanes had taken himself to bed. It had been his own fault for leaving the great hunt of the horn, changing to the sort of tales he told and songs he sang in the villages, Mara and the Three Foolish Kings, and how Susa tamed Jane Farstrider, and stories of Anla, the wise counselor. He had meant the choices to be a private comment on their stupidity, never dreaming any of them might listen, much less be intrigued. Intrigued, in a way. They had demanded more of the same, but they had laughed in the wrong places, at the wrong things. They had laughed at him too, apparently thinking he would not notice, or else that a full purse stuffed in his pocket would heal any wounds. He had almost thrown it away twice already. The heavy purse burning his pocket, and pride was not the only reason for his mood, nor even the nobles' contempt. They had asked questions about Rand, not even bothering to be subtle with a mere gleeman. Why was Rand in Caerhennene? Why had an Andoran lord taken him, a gleeman, aside? Too many questions. He was not sure his answers had been clever enough. His reflexes for the great game were rusty. Before turning toward the bunch of grapes, he had gone to the great tree. It was not difficult to find where someone was staying in Caerhennene if you pressed a palm or two with silver. He was still not sure what he had intended to say. Rand was gone with his friends and the Aes Sedai. It left a feeling of something not done. The boy's on his own now. Burn me. I'm out of it. He strode through the common room, empty as it seldom was, and took the steps 2 at a time. At least he tried to. His right leg did not bend well, and he nearly fell. Muttering to himself, he climbed the rest of the way at a slower pace and opened the door to his room softly so as not to wake Dina. Despite himself, he smiled when he saw her lying on the bed with her face turned to the wall, still in her dress. Fell asleep waiting for me, fool girl. But it was a kindly thought. He was not sure there was anything she would do that he would not forgive or excuse. Deciding on the spur of the moment that tonight was the night he'd let her perform for the first time, he lowered his harp case to the floor and put a hand on her shoulder to wake her and tell her. She rolled limply onto her back, staring up at him, glazed eyes open wide above the gash across her throat. The side of the bed that had been hidden by her body was dark and sodden. Tom's stomach heaved. If his throat had not been so tight he could not breathe, he would have vomited or screamed or both. He had only the creaking of wardrobe doors for warning. He spun, knives coming out of his sleeves and leaving his hands in the same motion. The first blade took the throat of a fat, balding man with a dagger in his hand. The man stumbled back, blood bubbling around his clutching fingers as he tried to cry out. Spinning on his bad leg threw Tom's other blade off, though. The knife stuck in the right shoulder of a heavily muscled man with scars on his face who was climbing out of the other wardrobe. The big man's knife dropped from a hand that suddenly would not do what he wanted, and he lumbered for the door. Before he could take a second step, Tom produced another knife and slashed him across the back of his leg. The big man yelled and stumbled, and Tom seized a handful of greasy hair, slamming his face against the wall beside the door. The man screamed again as the knife hilt sticking out of his shoulder hit the door. Tom thrust the blade in his hand to within an inch of the man's dark eye. The scars on the big man's face gave him a hard look, but he stared at the point without blinking and did not move a muscle. The fat man, lying half in the wardrobe, kicked a last kick and was still. "Before I kill you," Tom said, "tell me why." His voice was quiet, numb. He felt numb inside. "The great game," the man said quickly. His accent was of the streets, and his clothes as well, but they were a shade too fine, too unworn. He had more coin to spend than any four-gator should. "Nothing against you personal, you see. It is just the game." "The game? I'm not mixed up in Aes Sedai. Who would want to kill me for the great game?" The man hesitated. Tom moved his blade closer. If the fellow blinked, his eyelashes would brush the point. "Who, Barthanes?" came the hoarse answer. "Lord Barthanes." "We would not have killed you. Barthanes wants information. We just wanted to find out what you know. There can be gold in it for you. A nice, fat, golden crown for what you know. Maybe two." "Liar. I was in Barthanes' manor last night, as close to him as I am to you. If he wanted anything of me, I'd never have left alive. I tell you, we have been looking for you, or anyone who knows about this Andorran lord, for days. I never heard your name until last night downstairs. Lord Barthanes is generous. It could be 5 crowns. The man tried to pull his head away from the knife in Tom's hand, and Tom pushed him harder against the wall. What Andorran lord? But he knew the light helped him. He knew God of House Thor. Tall, young, a blade master, or at least he wears the sword. I know he came to see you. Him and an OGA. And you talked. Tell me what you know. I might even throw in a crown or two myself." "You fool," Tom breathed. "Dina died for this? Oh, Light, she's dead." He felt as if he wanted to cry. The boy's a shepherd a shepherd in a fancy coat, with Aes Sedai around him like bees around honey roses. Just a shepherd. He tightened his grip in the man's hair. Wait, you can make more than any 5 crowns, or even 10, 100 more like. Every house wants to know about this Randall Thor. 2 or 3 have approached me with what you know, and by knowing who wants to know it, we could both fill our pockets. And there has been a woman, a lady, I have seen more than once while asking after him. If we can find out who she is, why, we could sell that too. You've made one real mistake in it all, Tom said. Mistake? The man's far hand was beginning to slide down toward his belt. No doubt he had another dagger there. Tom ignored it. You should never have touched the girl. The man's hand darted for his belt. Then he gave one convulsive start as Tom's knife went home. Tom let him fall over away from the door and stood a moment before bending tiredly to tug his blades free. The door banged open, and he whirled with a snarl on his face. Zira jerked back, a hand to her throat, staring at him. That fool Ella just told me, she said unsteadily, that 2 of Barthanes' men were asking after you last night, and with what I've heard this morning. I thought you said you didn't play in the game anymore. They found me, he said wearily. Her eyes dropped from his face and widened as they took in the bodies of the 2 men. Hastily, she stepped into the room, shutting the door behind her. This is bad, Tom. You'll have to leave Kerhien. Her gaze fell on the bed, and her breath caught. Oh no. Oh no. Oh, Tom, I'm so sorry. I cannot leave yet, Zira. He hesitated, then tenderly drew a blanket over Dana, covering her face. I have another man to kill first. The innkeeper gave herself a shake and pulled her eyes away from the bed. Her voice was more than a little breathy, if you mean Barthanese. Everybody's talking about it already. He is dead. His servants found him this morning, torn to pieces in his bedchamber. The only way they knew it was him was his head stuck on a spike over the fireplace. She laid a hand on his arm. Tom, you can't hide that you were there last night, not from anybody who wants to know. Add these 2 in, and there's nobody in Kerhien who won't believe you were involved. There was a slight questioning note in her last words, as if she too were wondering. It doesn't matter, I suppose, he said dully. He could not stop looking down at the blanket-covered shape on the bed. Perhaps I will go back to Andor, to Caemlyn. She took his shoulders, turning him away from the bed. You men, she sighed, always thinking with either your muscles or your hearts, and never your heads. Caemlyn is as bad as Kerhien. For you, either place, you'll end up dead or in prison. Do you think she'd want that? If you want to honor her memory, stay alive. Will you take care of? He could not say it. Growing old, he thought, going soft. He pulled the heavy purse from his pocket and folded her hands around it. This should take care of. Everything. And help when they start asking questions about me too. I will see to everything, she said gently. You must go, Tom. Now. He nodded reluctantly and slowly began stuffing a few things in a set of saddlebags. While he worked, Zira got her first close look at the fat man sprawled partway in the wardrobe, and she gave a loud gasp. He looked at her inquiringly. As long as he had known her, she had never been one to go faint over blood. These aren't Barthanes' men, Tom. At least, that one isn't. She nodded toward the fat man. It's the worst-kept secret in Cairhien that he works for House Riatin. For Galdrian. Galdrian, he said flatly, what has that bloody shepherd gotten me into? What have the Aes Sedai gotten us both into? But it was Galdrian's men murdered her. There must have been something of his thoughts on his face. Zira said sharply, Dina wants you alive, you fool. You try to kill the king and you'll be dead before you get within 100 spans of him if you come that close. A roar came from the city walls, as if half of Cairhien were shouting. Frowning, Tom peered from his window. Beyond the top of the gray walls above the rooftops of the foregate, a thick column of smoke was rising into the sky, far beyond the walls. Beside the first black pillar, a few gray tendrils quickly grew into another, and more wisps appeared further on. He estimated the distance and took a deep breath. Perhaps you had better think about leaving too. It looks as if someone is firing the granaries. I have lived through riots before. Go now, Tom. With a last look at Dana's shrouded form, he gathered his things, but as he started to leave, Zara spoke again. You have a dangerous look in your eyes, Tom Merrilin. Imagine Dina sitting here, alive and hale. Think what she would say. Would she let you go off and get yourself killed to no purpose? I'm only an old gleeman, he said from the door, and Randall Thor is only a shepherd, but we both do what we must. Who could I possibly be dangerous to? As he pulled the door to, hiding her, hiding Denna, a mirthless, wolfish grin came onto his face. His leg hurt, but he barely felt it as he hurried purposefully down the stairs and out of the inn. Padan Fain reined in his horse atop a hill above Falme, in one of the few sparse thickets remaining on the hills outside the town. The pack horse bearing his precious burden bumped his leg, and he kicked it in the ribs without looking. The animal snorted and jerked back to the end of the lead he had tied to his saddle. The woman had not wanted to give up her horse, no more than any of the Dart friends who had followed him had wanted to be left alone in the hills with the Trollocs, without Fain's protecting presence. He had solved both problems easily. Meat in a Trolloc cookpot had no need of a horse. The woman's companions had been shaken by the journey along the ways, to a waygate outside a long-abandoned steading on Toman Head, and watching the Trollocs prepare their dinner had made the surviving Dark friends extremely biddable. From the edge of the trees, Fain studied the unwalled town and sneered. One short merchant train was rumbling in among the stables and horse lots and wagon yards that bordered the town, while another rumbled out, raising little dust from dirt packed by many years of such traffic. The men driving the wagons and the few riding beside them were all local men by their clothing, yet the mounted men, at least, had swords on baldricks, and even a few spears and bows. The soldiers he saw, and there were few, did not seem to be watching the armed men they had supposedly conquered. He had learned something of these people, these Seanchan, in his day and a night on Toman Head. At least, as much as the defeated folk knew. It was never hard to find someone alone, and they always answered questions properly put. Men gathered more information on the invaders, as if they actually believed they would eventually do something with what they knew, but they sometimes tried to hold back. Women, by and large, seemed interested in going on with their lives whoever their rulers were. Yet they noted details men did not, and they talked more quickly once they stopped screaming. Children talked the quickest of all, but they seldom said much that was worthwhile. He had discarded 3/4 of what he had heard as nonsense and rumors growing into fables, but he took some of those conclusions back. Now, anyone at all could enter Falme, it appeared. With a start, he saw the truth of a little more nonsense as 20 soldiers rode out of the town. He could not make out their mounts clearly, but they were certainly not horses. They ran with a fluid grace, and their dark skins seemed to have a glint in the morning sun, as of scales. He craned his neck to watch them disappear inland, then booted his horse toward the town. The local folk among the stables and parked wagons and fenced horse lots gave him no more than a glance or two. He had no interest in them either. He rode on into the town, onto its cobblestone streets, sloping down to the harbor. He could see the harbor clearly, and the large, oddly shaped Seanchan ships anchored there. No one bothered him as he searched streets that were neither crowded nor empty. There were more Seanchan soldiers here. The people hurried about their business with eyes down, bowing whenever soldiers passed, but the Seanchan paid them no mind. It all seemed peaceful on the surface, despite the armored Seanchan in the streets and the ships in the harbor, but Fane could sense the tension underneath. He always did well where men were tense and afraid. He came to a large house with more than a dozen soldiers standing guard before it. Fane stopped and dismounted. Except for one obvious officer, most wore armor of unrelieved black, and their helmets made him think of locusts' heads. Two leathery-skinned beasts with 3 eyes and horny beaks instead of mouths flanked the front door, squatting like crouching frogs. The soldier standing by each of the creatures had 3 eyes painted on the breast of his armor. Fane eyed the blue-bordered banner flapping above the roof, the spread-winged hawk clutching lightning bolts, and chortled inside himself. Women went in and out of a house across the street, women linked by silver leashes, but he ignored them. He knew about Damane from the villagers. They might be of some use later, but not now. The soldiers were looking at him, especially the officer, whose armor was all gold and red and green, forcing an ingratiating smile onto his face. Fane made himself bow deeply. "My lords, I have something here that will interest your great lord. I assure you, he will want to see it, and me personally." He gestured to the squarish shape on his pack horse, still wrapped in the huge, striped blanket in which his people had found it. The officer stared him up and down. "You sound a foreigner to this land. Have you taken the oaths?" "I obey, await, and will serve," Fane replied smoothly. Everyone he had questioned spoke of the oaths, though none had understood what they meant. If these people wanted oaths, he was prepared to swear anything. He had long since lost count of the oaths he had taken. The officer motioned 2 of his men to see what was under the blanket. Surprised grunts at the weight as they lifted it down from the pack saddle turned to gasps when they stripped the blanket away. The officer stared with no expression on his face at the silver-worked golden chest resting on the cobblestones, then looked at Fane, a gift fit for the Empress herself. "You will come with me." One of the soldiers searched Fane roughly, but he endured it in silence, noting that the officer and the 2 soldiers who took up the chest surrendered their swords and daggers before going inside. Anything he could learn of these people, however small, might help, though he was confident of his plan already. He was always confident, but never more than where lords feared an assassin's knife from their own followers. As they went through the door, the officer frowned at him, and for a moment Fane wondered why. Of course, the beasts. Whatever they were certainly no worse than Trollocs. Nothing at all beside a murdrawl, and he had not given them a second look. It was too late to pretend to be afraid of them now, but the Seanchan said nothing, only led him deeper into the house. And so Fane found himself on his face, in a room bare of furnishings, except for folding screens that hid its walls, while the officer told the High Lord Turak of him and his offering. Servants brought a table on which to set the chest so the High Lord would have no need to stoop. All Fane saw of them were scurrying slippers. He bided his time impatiently. Eventually, there would come a time when he was not the one to bow. Then the soldiers were dismissed, and Fane told to rise. He did so slowly, studying both the High Lord, with his shaven head and his long fingernails and his blue silk robe brocaded with blossoms, and the man who stood beside him with the unshaven half of his pale hair in a long braid. Fane was sure the fellow in green was only a servant, however great, but servants could be useful, especially if they stood high in their master's sight. A marvelous gift. Turak's eyes lifted from the chest to Fane. A scent of roses wafted from the High Lord, yet the question asks itself, how did one like you come by a chest many lesser lords could not afford? Are you a thief? Fane tugged at his worn, none too clean coat. It is sometimes necessary for a man to appear less than he is, High Lord. My present shabbiness allowed me to bring this to you, unmolested. This chest is old, High Lord, as old as the age of legends, and within it lies a treasure such as few eyes have ever seen. Soon, very soon, High Lord, I will be able to open it and give you that which will enable you to take this land as far as you wish, to the spine of the world, the Isle Waste, the lands beyond. Nothing will stand against you, High Lord, once I... He cut off as Turak began running his long-nailed fingers over the chest. I have seen chests such as this, chests from the age of legends, the High Lord said, though none so fine. They are meant to be opened only by those who know the pattern. But He pressed among the ornate whorls and bosses. There was a sharp click, and he lifted back the lid. A flicker of what might have been disappointment passed across his face. Bane bit the inside of his mouth till blood came to keep from snarling. It lessened his bargaining position that he was not the one who had opened the chest. Still, all the rest could go as he had planned, if he could only make himself be patient. But he had been patient so long. These are treasures from the age of legends, Turak said, lifting out the curled horn in one hand and the curved dagger with the ruby and its golden hilt in the other. Fane clutched his hands and fists at his sides so he would not grab the dagger. The age of legends, Turak repeated softly, tracing the silver script inlaid around the golden bell of the horn with the tip of the dagger's blade. His brows rose in startlement, the first open expression Fane had seen from him, but in the next instant Turak's face was as smooth as ever. Do you have any idea what this is? The Horn of Valyre, High Lord, Fane said smoothly, pleased to see the mouth of the man with the braid drop open. Turak only nodded as if to himself. The High Lord turned away. Fane blinked and opened his mouth. Then, at a sharp gesture from the yellow-haired man, followed without speaking. It was another room with all the original furnishings gone, replaced by folding screens and a single chair facing a tall round cabinet. Still holding the horn and the dagger, Turak looked at the cabinet, then away. He said nothing, but the other Seanchan snapped quick orders, and in moments men in plain woolen robes appeared through a door behind the screens bearing another small table. A young woman with hair so pale it was almost white came behind them, her arms full of small stands of polished wood in various sizes and shapes. Her garment was white silk, and so thin that Fane could see her body clearly through it, but he had eyes only for the dagger. The horn was a means to an end, but the dagger was a part of him. Turak briefly touched one of the wooden stands the girl held, and she placed it on the center of the table. The men turned the chair to face it under the direction of the man with the braid. The lower servants' hair hung to their shoulders. They scurried out with bows that almost put their heads on their knees, placing the horn on the stand so that it stood upright. Turak laid the dagger on the table in front of it and went to sit in the chair. Fane could stand it no longer. He reached for the dagger. The yellow-haired man caught his wrist in a crushing grip. Unshaven dog, know that the hand that touches the property of the High Lord unbidden is cut off. It is mine, Fane growled. Patience. So long. Turak, lounging back in the chair, lifted one blue lacquered fingernail, and Fane was pulled out of the way so the High Lord could view the horn unobstructed. Yours, Turak said, inside a chest you could not open. If you interest me sufficiently, I may give you the dagger. Even if it is from the age of legends, I have no interest in such as that. Before all else, you will answer me a question. Why have you brought the Horn of Valyre to me? Fane eyed the dagger longingly a moment more, then jerked his wrist free and rubbed it as he bowed. "That you may sound it, High Lord. Then you may take all of this land if you wish. All of the world. You may break the White Tower and grind the Aes Sedai to dust, for even their powers cannot stop. Heroes come back from the dead. I am to sound it." Turak's tone was flat. "And break the White Tower. Again, why? You claim to obey, await, and serve, but this is a land of oath breakers. Why do you give your land to me? Do you have some private quarrel with these women?" Fane tried to make his voice convincing, patient, like a worm boring from within. "High Lord, my family has passed down a tradition, generation upon generation. We served the High King, Artur Pendrag Tanriel, and when he was murdered by the witches of Tar Valon, we did not abandon our oaths. When others warred and tore apart what Artur Hawkwing had made, we held to our swearing and suffered for it, but held to it still. This is our tradition, High Lord, handed father to son and mother to daughter, down all the years since the High King was murdered, that we await the return of the armies Artur Hawkwing sent across the Arith Ocean, that we await the return of Artur Hawkwing's blood to destroy the White Tower and take back what was the High King's. And when the Hawkwing's blood returns, we will serve and advise as we did for the High King. High Lord, except for its border, the banner that flies over this roof is the banner of Luther, the son Artur Pendrag Tanreal sent with his armies across the ocean." Fane dropped to his knees, giving a good imitation of being overwhelmed. "High Lord, I wish only to serve and advise the blood of the High King." Turak was silent so long that Fane began to wonder if he needed further convincing. He was ready with more, as much as was required. Finally, though, the High Lord spoke. "You seem to know what none, neither the high nor the low, has spoken since sighting this land. The people here speak it as one rumor among 10, but you know. I can see it in your eyes, hear it in your voice. I could almost think you were sent to entangle me in a trap. But who, possessing the horn of Valeri, would use it so? None of those of the blood who came with the Haleen could have had the horn, for the legend says it was hidden in this land. And surely any lord of this land would use it against me rather than put it in my hands. How did you come to possess the horn of Valeri? Do you claim to be a hero, as in the legend? Have you done valorous deeds?" "I am no hero, High Lord." Fane ventured a self-deprecating smile, but Turak's face did not alter, and he let it go. "The horn was found by an ancestor of mine during the turmoil after the High King's death. He knew how to open the chest, but that secret died with him in the War of the 100 Years that rent Artur Hawkwing's empire, so that all we who followed him knew was that the horn lay within, and we must keep it safe until the High King's blood returned." Almost could I believe you. Once you sound the horn, do not ruin what convincing you have managed to do. I shall not sound the horn of Valeri. When I return to Seanchan, I shall present it to the Empress as the chiefest of my trophies. Perhaps the Empress will sound it herself. "But, High Lord," Fane protested, "you must." He found himself lying on his side, his head ringing. Only when his eyes cleared did he see the man with the pale braid rubbing his knuckles and realize what had happened. "Some words," the fellow said softly, "are never used to the High Lord." Fane decided how the man was going to die. Turak looked from Fane to the horn as placidly as if he had seen nothing. "Perhaps I will give you to the Empress, along with the horn of Valer. She might find you amusing. A man who claims his family held true where all others broke their oaths or forgot them." Fane hid his sudden elation in the act of climbing back to his feet. He had not even known of the existence of an Empress until Turak mentioned her. but access to a ruler again. Shh, shh. That opened new paths, new plans, access to a ruler with the might of the Seanchan beneath her and the horn of Valere in her hands. Much better than making this Turak a great king. He could wait for some parts of his plan. Softly, mustn't let him know how much you want it. After so long, a little more patience will not hurt, as the High Lord wishes, he said, trying to sound like a man who only wanted to serve. You seem almost eager, Turak said, and Fane barely suppressed a wince. I will tell you why I will not sound the horn of Valere, or even keep it, and perhaps that will cure your eagerness. I do not wish a gift of mine to offend the Empress by his actions. If your eagerness cannot be cured, it will never be satisfied, for you will never leave these shores. Do you know that whoever blows the horn of Valera is linked to it thereafter, that so long as he or she lives, it is no more than a horn to any other? He did not sound as if he expected answers, and in any case, he did not pause for them. I stand 12th in line of succession to the Crystal Throne. If I kept the horn of Valere, all between myself and the throne would think I meant to be first hereafter, and while the Empress, of course, wishes that we contend with one another, so that the strongest and most cunning will follow her. She currently favors her second daughter, and she would not look well on any threat to Tuan. If I sounded it, even if I then laid this land at her feet, and every woman in the White Tower leashed, the Empress, may she live forever, would surely believe I meant to be more than merely her heir. Fane stopped himself short of suggesting how possible that would be with the aid of the horn. Something in the High Lord's voice suggested, as hard as Fane found it to believe, that he actually meant his wish for her to live forever. I must be patient, a worm in the root. The Empress's listeners may be anywhere, Turak continued. They may be anyone. Juan was born and raised in the house of Aladon, and his family for 11 generations before him, yet even he could be a listener. The man with the braid half made a protesting gesture before jerking himself back to stillness. Even a High Lord or a High Lady can find their deepest secrets known to listeners, can wake to find themselves already handed over to the seekers for truth. Truth is always difficult to find, but the seekers spare no pain in their search, and they will search as long as they think there is need. They make great efforts not to allow a High Lord or High Lady to die in their care, of course, for no man's hand may slay one in whose veins flows the blood of Artur Hawkwing. If the Empress must order such a death, the unfortunate one is placed alive in a silken bag, and that bag hung over the side of the Tower of the Ravens and left there until it rots away. No such care would be taken for one such as you. At the Court of the Nine Moons in Seandar, one such as you could be given to the Seekers for a shift of your eye, for a misspoken word, for a whim. Are you still eager? Fane managed to tremble in his knees. I wish only to serve and advise, High Lord. I know much that may be useful. This court of Seandar sounded a place where his plans and skills would find fertile soil. Until I sail back to Seanchan, you will amuse me with your tales of your family and its tradition. It is a relief to find a second man in this light-forsaken land who can amuse me, even if you both tell lies, as I suspect. You may leave me. No other word was spoken, but the girl with the nearly white hair and the almost transparent robe appeared on quick feet to kneel with downcast head beside the High Lord, offering a single steaming cup on a lacquered tray. High Lord, Fane said. The man with the braid, Juan, took hold of his arm, but he pulled loose. Juan's mouth tightened angrily as Fane made his deepest bow yet. I will kill him slowly, yes, High Lord. There are those who follow me. They mean to take the horn of Valere. Dark friends and worse, High Lord, and they cannot be more than a day or two behind me. Turak took a sip of black liquid from the thin cup balanced on long-nailed fingertips. Few dark friends remain in Seanchan. Those who survive the seekers for truth meet the axe of the headsman. It might be amusing to meet a dark friend. High Lord, they are dangerous. They have Trollocs with them. They are led by one who calls himself Rand Al Thor, a young man, but vile in the shadow beyond belief, with a lying, devious tongue. In many places he has claimed to be many things, but always the Trollocs come when he is there. High Lord, always the Trollocs come, and kill. Trollocs, Turak mused. There were no Trollocs in Seanchan, but the armies of the night had other allies. Other things. I have often wondered if a Grome could kill a Trolloc. I will have watch kept for your Trollocs and your dark friends, if they are not another lie. This land wearies me with boredom. He sighed and inhaled the fumes from his cup. Fain let the grimacing Juan pull him out of the room, hardly even listening to the snarled lecture on what would happen if he ever again failed to leave Lord Turak's presence when given permission to do so. He barely noticed when he was pushed into the street with a coin and instructions to return on the morrow. Randall Thor was his now. I will see him dead at last, and then the world will pay for what was done to me. Giggling under his breath, he led his horses down into the town in search of an inn, studying tofu. The river hills on which the city of Kerhian stood gave way to flatter lands and forests. When Rand and the others had ridden half a day, the Shienarans still with their armor on the pack horses. There were no roads where they went, only a scattering of cart tracks, and few farms or villages. Varen pressed for speed, and Ingtar grumbling constantly that they were letting themselves be tricked, that Fane would never have told them where he was really going, yet grumbling at the same time about riding in the opposite direction from Toman Head, as if part of him believed in Toman Head were not months away except by the way they took. Ingtar obliged her. The gray owl banner flew on the wind of their passage. Rand rode with grim determination, avoiding conversation with Varen. He had this thing to do, this duty Ingtar would have called it, and then he could be free of Aes Sedai once and for all. Kern seemed to share something of his mood, staring straight ahead at nothing as they rode. When they finally stopped for the night at the edge of a forest, with full dark almost on them, Perrin asked Loyal questions about the steading. Trollocs would not enter a steading. Would wolves? Loyal replied shortly that it was only creatures of the shadow that were reluctant to enter steading. And Aes Sedai, of course, since they could not touch the true source inside a steading, or channel the one power. The Ogier himself appeared the most reluctant of all to go to steading tofu. Matt was the only one who seemed eager, almost desperately so. His skin looked as if he had not seen the sun in a year, and his cheeks had begun to go hollow, though he said he felt ready to run a foot race. Varen put her hands on him for healing before he rolled into his blankets, and again before they mounted their horses in the morning, but it made no difference in how he looked. Even Yurin frowned when he looked at Matt. The sun stood high on the second day when Varen suddenly sat up straight in her saddle and looked around. Beside her, Ingtar gave a start. The undergrowth was not too thick. They had found an easy way under the canopy of oak and hickory, black gum and beech, pierced here and there by a tall pine or leather leaf, or the white slash of a paper bark. But as he followed them, he suddenly felt a chill pass through him, as though he had leaped into a waterwood pond in winter. It flashed through him and was gone, leaving behind a feeling of refreshment, and there was a dull and distant sense of loss, too, though he could not imagine of what. Every rider, as he reached that point, gave a jerk or made some exclamation. Huron's mouth dropped open, and Uno whispered, "Bloody, flaming, shh, shh." Then he shook his head, as if he could not think of anything else to say. There was a look of recognition in Perrin's yellow eyes. Loyal took a deep, slow breath and let it out. It feels, shh, shh, good, shh, shh, to be back in a steading. Frowning, Rand looked around. He had expected a steading to be somehow different, but except for that one chill, the forest was the same as what they had been riding through all day. There was the sudden sense of being rested, of course. Then, an Ogier stepped out from behind an oak. She was shorter than Loyal, which meant she stood head and shoulders taller than Rand, but with the same broad nose and big eyes, the same wide mouth and tufted ears. Her eyebrows were not so long as Loyal's, though, and her features seemed delicate beside his, the tufts on her ears finer. She wore a long green dress and a green cloak embroidered with flowers, and carried a bunch of silver bell blossoms as if she had been gathering them. She looked at them calmly, waiting. Loyal scrambled down from his tall horse and bowed hastily. Rand and the others did the same, if not so quickly as Loyal. Even Varen inclined her head. Loyal gave their names formally, but he did not mention the name of his steading. For a moment, the Ogier girl Rand was sure she was no older than Loyal, studied them, then smiled. "Be welcome to Steading, Tilfu." Her voice was a lighter version of Loyal's too, the softer rumble of a smaller bumblebee. "I am Aerith, daughter of Iva, daughter of Iva, daughter of Alar. Be welcome. We have had so few human visitors since the stonemasons left Cairhien, and now so many at once. Why, we even had some of the traveling people, though, of course, they left when the Oh, I talk too much. I will take you to the elders, only. She searched among them for the one in charge, and settled finally on Varen. Aes Sedai, you have so many men with you, and armed. Could you please leave some of them outside? Forgive me, but it is always unsettling to have very many armed humans in the steading at once. Of course, Aerith, Varen said. Ingtar, will you see to it? Ingtar gave orders to Uno, and so it was that he and Huron were the only Shienarans to follow Aerith deeper into the steading. Leading his horse like the others, Rand looked up as Loyal came closer, with many glances at Aerith up ahead with Varen and Ingtar. Huron walked midway between, staring around in amazement, though Rand was not sure at what exactly. Loyal bent to speak quietly. Is she not beautiful, Rand? And her voice sings. Matt snickered, but when Loyal looked at him questioningly, he said, Very pretty, Loyal. A little tall for my taste, you understand, but very pretty, I'm sure. Loyal frowned uncertainly, but nodded. Yes, she is. His expression lightened. It does feel good to be back in a steading. Not that the longing was taking me, you understand? The longing, Perrin said. I do not understand, Loyal. We Ogier are bound to the steading, Perrin. It is said that before the breaking of the world we could go where we wished for as long as we wished, like you humans, but that changed with the breaking. Ogier were scattered like every other people, and they could not find any of the steading again. Everything was moved, everything changed. Mountains, rivers, even the seas. Everybody knows about the breaking, Matt said impatiently. What does it have to do with this longing? It was during the exile, while we wandered lost, that the longing first came on us. The desire to know the steading once more, to know our homes again. Many died of it. Loyal shook his head sadly. More died than lived. When we finally began to find the steading again, one at a time, in the years of the Covenant of the 10 Nations, it seemed we had defeated the longing at last, but it had changed us, put seeds in us. Now, if an Ogier is outside too long, the longing comes again, he begins to weaken, and he dies if he does not return. Do you need to stay here a while? Rand asked anxiously. There's no need to kill yourself to go with us. I will know it when it comes. Loyal laughed. It will be long before it is strong enough to cause harm to me. Why, Dalar spent 10 years among the sea folk without ever seeing a steading, and she came safely home. An Ogier woman appeared out of the trees, pausing a moment to speak with Aerith and Varen. She looked Ingtar up and down and seemed to dismiss him, which made him blink. Her eyes swept across Loyal, flicked over Urin and the Emmons fielders, before she went off into the forest again. Loyal seemed to be trying to hide behind his horse. "Besides," he said, peering cautiously across his saddle after her, "it is a dull life in the steading compared to traveling with 3 Ta'veren." "If you were going to start that again," Matt muttered, and Loyal spoke up quickly. "3 friends, then. You are my friends, I hope." "I am," Rand said simply, and Perrin nodded. Matt laughed. "How could I not be friends with somebody who dices so badly?" He threw up his hands when Rand and Perrin looked at him. "Oh, all right. I like you, Loyal. You're my friend. Just don't go on about sometimes you're as bad to be around as Rand." His voice sank to a mutter. "At least we're safe here in the steading." Rand grimaced. He knew what Matt meant. Here in the steading, where I can't channel. Perrin punched Matt's shoulder, but looked sorry that he had when Matt grimaced at him with that gaunt face. It was the music Rand became aware of first, unseen flutes and fiddles in a jolly tune that floated through the trees, and deep voices singing and laughing. Clear the field, smooth it low, let no weed or stubble stand. Here we labor, here we toil, here the towering trees will grow. Almost at the same moment he realized that the huge shape he was seeing through the trees was itself a tree, with a ridged, buttressed trunk that must have been 20 paces thick. Gaping, he followed it up with his eyes, up through the forest canopy, to branches spreading like the top of a gigantic mushroom, a good 100 paces above the ground. And beyond it were taller still. "Burn me," Matt breathed. "You could build 10 houses from just one of those. 50 houses. Cut down a great tree?" Loyal sounded scandalized, and more than a little angry. His ears were stiff and still, his long eyebrows down on his cheeks. "We never cut down one of the great trees, not unless it dies, and they almost never do. Few survived the breaking, but some of the largest were seedlings during the Age of Legends." "I'm sorry," Matt said. "I was just saying how big they are. I won't hurt your trees." Loyal nodded, seeming mollified. More Ogier appeared now, walking among the trees. Most seemed intent on whatever they were about, though all looked at the newcomers, and even gave a friendly nod or a small bow. None stopped or spoke. They had a curious way of moving, in some manner blending a careful deliberateness with an almost childlike carefree joyfulness. They knew and liked who and what they were and where they were, and they seemed at peace with themselves and everything around them. Rand found himself envying them. Few of the Ogier men were any taller than Loyal, but it was easy to pick out the older men, one and all. They wore mustaches as long as their dangling eyebrows and narrow beards under their chins. All of the younger were smooth-shaven, like Loyal. Many of the men were in their shirt sleeves and carried shovels and mattocks or saws and buckets of pitch. The others wore plain coats that buttoned to the neck and flared about their knees like kilts. The women seemed to favor embroidered flowers, and many wore flowers in their hair too. The embroidery was limited to the cloaks of the younger women. The older women's dresses were embroidered as well, and some women with gray hair had flowers and vines from neck to hem. A handful of the Ogier, women and girls for the most part, did seem to take special notice of Loyal. He walked staring straight ahead, ears twitching more wildly the further they went. Rand was startled to see an Ogier apparently walking up out of the ground, out of one of the grassy, wildflower-covered mounds that lay scattered all among the trees here. Then he saw windows in the mounds, and an Ogier woman standing at one, apparently rolling a pie crust, and realized he was looking at Ogier houses. The window frames were stone, but they not only seemed natural formations, they appeared to have been sculpted by wind and water over generations. The great trees, with their massive trunks and spreading roots as thick as horses, needed a great deal of room between them, but several grew right in the town. Dirt ramps took the paths over the roots. In fact, aside from the pathways, the only way to tell town from forest at a glance was a large open space in the center of the town, around what could only be the stump of one of the great trees. Nearly 100 paces across, its surface was polished as smooth as any floor, and there were steps built up to it at several places. Rand was imagining how tall that tree had been when Aerith spoke loudly enough for them all to hear. Here come our other guests. 3 human women came walking around the side of the huge stump. The youngest was carrying a wooden bowl. Aiel, Ingtar said. Maidens of the spear, maidens of the spear. As well, I did leave Masema with the others. Yet he stepped away from Varen and Aerith and reached over his shoulder to loosen his sword in its scabbard. Rand studied the Aiel with an uneasy curiosity. They were what too many people had tried to tell him he was. 2 of the women were mature, the other little more than a girl, but all 3 were tall for women. Their short-cut hair ranged from a reddish brown to almost golden, with a narrow, shoulder-length tail left long at the back. They wore loose breeches tucked into soft boots, and all their clothes were some shade of brown or gray or green. He thought the garments would fade into rock or woods, almost as well as a warder's cloak. Short bows poked over their shoulders. Quivers and long knives hung at their belts, and each carried a small round shield of hide and a cluster of spears with short shafts and long points. Even the youngest moved with a grace that suggested she knew how to use the weapon she carried. Abruptly, the women became aware of the other humans. They seemed as startled at being startled as they did at the sight of Rand and the others, but they moved like lightning. The youngest one shouted, "Shinarans!" and turned to set the bowl carefully behind her. The other 2 quickly lifted brown cloths from around their shoulders, wrapping them around their heads instead. The older women were raising black veils across their faces, hiding everything but their eyes, and the youngest straightened to imitate them. Crouching low, they advanced at a deliberate pace, shields held forward with their clusters of spears, except for the one each woman held ready in her other hand. Ingtar's sword came out of its sheath. "Stand clear, Aes Sedai." "Aerith, stand clear." Huron snatched out his swordbreaker, wavered between cudgel and sword for his other hand. After another glance at the Aiel's spears, he chose the sword. "You must not," the Ogier girl protested, wringing her hands. She turned from Ingtar to the Aiel and back. "You must not." Rand realized the heron-marked blade was in his hands. Perrin had his axe half out of the loop at his belt and was hesitating, shaking his head. "Are you too crazy?" Matt demanded. His bow still slanted across his back. "I don't care if they are Aiel. They're women." "Stop this," Vereen demanded. "Stop this immediately." The Aiel never broke stride, and the Aes Sedai clenched her fists in frustration. Matt moved back to put a foot in his stirrup. "I'm leaving," he announced. "You hear me? I'm not staying to let them stick those things in me, and I am not going to shoot a woman." "The pact," Laura was shouting. "Remember the pact." It had no more effect than the continued pleas from Varen and Aerith. Rand noticed that both the Aes Sedai and the Ogier girl were keeping well out of the Aiel's way. He wondered if Matt had the right idea. He was not sure he could hurt a woman even if she was trying to kill him. What decided him was the thought that even if he did manage to reach Red Saddle, the Aiel were now no more than 30 paces away. He suspected those short spears could be thrown that far. As the women came closer, still crouching, spears ready, He stopped worrying about not hurting them and began worrying about how to stop them from hurting him. Nervously, he sought the void, and it came, and the distant thought floated outside it that it was only the void. The glow of Set-in was not there. The emptiness was more empty than he ever remembered, vaster, like a hunger great enough to consume him, a hunger for more. There was supposed to be something more. Abruptly, an Ogier strode in between the two groups, his narrow beard quivering. "What is the meaning of this? Put up your weapons." He sounded scandalized. "For you." His glare took in Ingtar and Hurin, Rand and Perrin, and did not spare Mat for all his empty hands. "There is some excuse, but for you." He rounded on the Aiel women who had stopped their advance. "Have you forgotten the pact?" The women uncovered their heads and faces so hastily that it seemed they were trying to pretend they had never been covered. The girl's face was bright red, and the other women looked abashed. One of the older women, the one with the reddish hair, said, "Forgive us, Tree Brother. We remember the pact, and we would not have bared steel. But we are in the land of the tree killers, where every hand is against us, and we saw armed men." Her eyes were gray, Rand saw, like his own. "You are in a steading, Ryan," the Ogier said gently. "Everyone is safe in the steading, little sister. There is no fighting here, and no hand raised against another." She nodded, ashamed, and the Ogier looked at Ingtar and the others. Ingtar sheathed his sword, and Rand did the same, though not so quickly as Hurin, who looked almost as embarrassed as the Aiel. Perrin had never gotten his axe all the way out. As he took hand from hilt, Rand let the void go too and shivered. The void went, but it left behind a slowly fading echo of the emptiness all through him, and a desire for something to fill it. The Ogier turned to Varen and bowed. "Aes Sedai, I am Juin, son of Lassel, son of Laud. I have come to take you to the elders. They would know why an Aes Sedai comes among us, with armed men and one of our own youths." Loyal hunched his shoulders as if trying to disappear. Moiraine gave the Aiel a regretful look, as if she wanted to talk with them, then motioned Dwayne to lead, and he took her away without another word or even the first look at Loyal. For a few moments, Rand and the others stood facing the three Aiel women uneasily. At least, Rand knew he was uneasy. Ingtar seemed steady as a stone with no more expression than one. The Aiel might have unveiled their faces, but they still had spears in their hands, and they studied the four men as though trying to see inside them. Rand in particular received increasingly angry looks. He heard the youngest woman mutter, "He is wearing a sword," in tones of mingled horror and contempt. Then the three were leaving, stopping to retrieve the wooden bowl and looking over their shoulders at Rand and the others until they vanished among the trees. Maidens of the spear. Ingtar muttered, "I never thought they'd stop once they veiled their faces. Certainly not for a few words." He looked at Rand and his two friends. "You should see a charge by red shields or stone dogs, as easy to stop as an avalanche." "They would not break the pact once it was recalled to them," Eris said, smiling. "They came for Sung Wood." A note of pride entered her voice. "We have 2 tree singers in Steading Sofu. They are rare now. I have heard that Steading Shangtai has a young tree singer who is very talented, but we have 2. Loyal blushed, but she did not appear to notice. "If you will come with me, I will show you where you may wait until the elders have spoken." As they followed her, Perrin murmured, "Sungwood, my left foot. Those Aiel are searching for he who comes with the dawn." And Mat added dryly, "They're looking for you, Rand." "For me, that is crazy." "What makes you think?" He cut off as Aerith showed them down the steps of a wildflower-covered house apparently set aside for human guests. The rooms were 20 paces from stone wall to stone wall, with painted ceilings a good 2 spans above the floor, but the Ogier had done their best making something that would be comfortable for humans. Even so, the furniture was a little too large for comfort, the chairs tall enough to lift a man's heels off the floor, the table higher than Rand's waist. Huron, at least, could have walked erect into the stone fireplace, which seemed to have been worn by water rather than made by hands. Aerith eyed Loyal doubtfully, but he waved away her concern and pulled one of the chairs into the corner least easily seen from the door. As soon as the Ogier girl left, Rand got Mat and Perrin over to one side. "What do you mean they're looking for me? Why?" "For what reason? They looked right at me and went away." "They looked at you," Mat said with a grin, "like you hadn't bathed in a month and had doused yourself with sheep dip besides." His grin faded. "But they could be looking for you. We met another Aiel." Rand listened in growing amazement to their tale of the meeting in Kinslayer's dagger. Mat told most of it, with Perrin putting in a correcting word now and again when he embellished too much. Mat made a great show of how dangerous the Isleman had been, and how close the meeting had come to a fight. "And since you're the only Aiel we know," he finished, "well, it could be you. Ingtar says Aiel never live outside the waste, so you must be the only one." "I don't think that's funny, Mat," Rand growled. "I am not an Aiel." "The Amyrlin said you are." "Ingtar thinks you are," Tam said. "Shh, shh, shh." He was sick, fevered. They had severed the roots he had thought he had, the Aes Sedai and Tam between them, though Tam had been too sick to know what he was saying. They had cut him loose to tumble before the wind, then offered him something new to hold on to. False dragon, Aiel. He could not claim those for roots. He would not. Maybe I don't belong to anyone, but the 2 Rivers is the only home I know. "I didn't mean anything," Mat protested. "It's just... Shh, shh, shh. Burn me. Ingtar says you are. Masema says you are. Urien could have been your cousin, and if Ryan put on a dress and said she was your aunt, you'd believe it yourself." "Oh, all right." "Don't look at me like that, Perrin. If he wants to say he isn't, all right. What difference does it make anyway?" Perrin shook his head. "OJ girls brought water and towels for washing faces and hands, and cheese and fruit and wine, with pewter goblets a little too large to be comfortable in the hand. Other Ogier women came too, their dresses all embroidered. One by one they appeared, a dozen of them all told, to ask if the humans were comfortable, if they needed anything. Each turned her attentions to Loyal just before she left. He gave his answers respectfully, but in as few words as Rand had ever heard him use, standing with an Ogier-sized wood-bound book clutched to his chest like a shield, and when they went, he huddled in his chair with the book held up in front of his face. Books in the house were one thing, not sized for humans. "Just smell this air, Lord Rand," Huron said, filling his lungs with a smile. His feet dangled from one of the chairs at the table. He swung them like a boy. "I never thought most places smelled bad, but this... Shh, shh, shh. Lord Rand, I don't think there's ever been any killing here. Not even any hurting, except by accident." "The steading are supposed to be safe for everyone," Rand said. He was watching Luelle. That's what the stories say anyway. He swallowed a last bit of white cheese and went over to the Ogier. Mat followed with a goblet in his hand. "What's the matter, Loyal?" Rand said. "You've been as nervous as a cat in a dog yard ever since we came here." "It is nothing," Loyal said, giving the door an uneasy glance from the corner of his eye. "Are you afraid they'll find out you left steading Shangtai without permission from your elders?" Loyal looked around wildly, the tufts on his ears vibrating. "Don't say that," he hissed. He hissed, Not where anyone can hear. If they found out. Shh, shh. With a heavy sigh, he slumped back, looking from Rand to Matt to Matt. I don't know how humans do it, but among Ogier, shh, shh, shh. If a girl sees a boy she likes, she goes to her mother. Or sometimes the mother sees someone she thinks is suitable. In any case, if they agree, the girl's mother goes to the boy's mother, and the next thing the boy knows, his marriage is all arranged. Doesn't the boy have any say in it? Matt asked incredulously. None. The women always say we would spend our lives married to the trees if it was left to us. Loyal shifted, grimacing. Half of our marriages take place between steading. Groups of young Ogier visit from steading to steading so they can see and be seen. If they discover I'm outside without permission, the elders will almost certainly decide I need a wife to settle me down. Before I know it, they'll have sent a message to Steading Shangtai, to my mother, and she will come here and have me married before she washes off the dust of her journey. She's always said I am too hasty and need a wife. I think she was looking when I left. Whatever wife she chooses for me. Shh, shh. Well, any wife at all won't let me go back outside until I have gray in my beard. Wives always say no man should be allowed outside until he's settled enough to control his temper. Matt gave a guffaw loud enough to draw every head, but at Loyal's frantic gesture he spoke softly. Among us, men do the choosing, and no wife can stop a man doing what he wants. Rand frowned, remembering how Egwene had begun following him around when they were both little. It was then that Mistress Alvir had begun taking a special interest in him, more than in any of the other boys. Later, some girls would dance with him on feast days and some would not, and those who would were always Egwene's friends, while those who would not were girls Egwene did not like. He also seemed to remember Mistress Alvir taking Tam aside, and she was muttering about Tam not having a wife for her to talk to, and after that, Tam and everyone else had acted as if he and Egwene were promised, even though they had not knelt before the women's circle to say the words. He had never thought about it this way before. Things between Egwene and him had always just seemed to be the way they were. And that was that. I think we do it the same way, he muttered, and when Matt laughed, he added, Do you remember your father ever doing anything your mother really didn't want him to? Matt opened his mouth with a grin, then frowned thoughtfully and closed it again. Juin came down the steps from outside. If you please, will all of you come with me? The elders would see you. He did not look at Loyal, but Loyal still almost dropped the book. If the elders try to make you stay, Rand said, we'll say we need you to go with us. I'll bet it isn't about you at all, Matt said. I'll bet they're just going to say we can use the Waygate. He shook himself and his voice fell even lower. We really have to do it, don't we? It was not a question. Stay and get married or travel the ways. Loyal grimaced ruefully. Life is very unsettling with Ta'veren for friends. Among the elders. As Juin took them through the Ogier town, Rand saw that Loyal was growing more and more anxious. Loyal's ears were as stiff as his back. His eyes grew bigger every time he saw another Ogier looking at him, especially the women and girls, and a large number of them did seem to take notice of him. He looked as if he expected his own execution. The bearded Ogier gestured to wide steps leading down into a grassy mound that was bigger by far than any other. It was a hill, for all practical purposes, almost at the base of one of the great trees. Why don't you wait out here, Loyal? Rand said. The elders, Juin began, probably just want to see the rest of us. Rand finished for him. Why don't they leave him alone? Matt put in. Loyal nodded vigorously. Yes, I think. Shh. His ears jerked, but he looked at the broad door to which the stone steps led down and nodded again. Yes, I will sit out here and I'll read. That is it. I will read. Fumbling in his coat pocket, he produced a book. He settled himself on the mound beside the steps, the book small in his hands, and fixed his eyes on the pages. I will just sit here and read until you come out. His ears twitched as if he could feel the women's eyes. Juin shook his head, then shrugged and motioned to the steps again. If you please, the elders are waiting. The huge windowless room inside the mound was scaled for Ogier, with a thick beam ceiling more than 4 spans up. It could have fit in any palace, for size at least. The 7 Ogiers seated on the dais directly in front of the door made it shrink a little by their size, but Rand still felt as if he were in a cavern. The somber floor stones were smooth, if large and irregular in shape, but the gray walls could have been the rough side of a cliff. The ceiling beams, rough-hewn as they were, looked like great roots, except for a high-backed chair where Vereen sat facing the dais. The only furnishings were the heavy, vine-carved chairs of the elders. The Ogier woman in the middle of the dais sat in a chair raised a little higher than those of the others. 3 bearded men to her left in long, flaring coats. 3 women to her right in dresses like her own, embroidered in vines and flowers from neckline to hem. All had aged faces and pure white hair, even to the tufts on their ears, and an air of massive dignity. Kieran gaped at them openly, and Rand felt like staring himself. Not even Varen had the appearance of wisdom that was in the elders' huge eyes, nor Morgaze in her crown their authority, nor Moiraine their calm serenity. Ingtar was the first to bow, as formally as Rand had ever seen from him, while the others still stood rooted. I am Allah, the Ogier woman on the highest chair said when they had finally taken their places beside Varen, eldest of the elders of Steading Sofu. Varen has told us that you have need to use the Waygate here. To recover the Horn of Valer from Dart Friends is a great need indeed, but we have allowed none to travel the ways in more than 100 years, neither us nor the elders of any other Steading. I will find the horn, Ingtar said angrily. I must, if you will not permit us to use the Waygate. He fell silent as Varen looked at him, but the scowl remained on his face. Alar smiled. Be not so hasty, Shinnaran. You humans never take time for thought. Only decisions reached in calm can be sure. Her smile faded to seriousness, but her voice kept its own measured calm. The dangers of the ways are not to be faced with a sword in your hand, not charging Aiel or ravening Trollocs. I must tell you that to enter the ways is to risk not only death and madness, but perhaps your very souls. We have seen Machine Sheen, Rand said, and Matt and Perrin agreed. They could not manage to sound eager to do it again. I will follow the horn to Sheol Ghul itself, if need be, Ingtar said firmly. Huron only nodded, as if including himself in Ingtar's words. Bring trail, Alar commanded. And Juin, who had remained by the door, bowed and left. It is not enough, she told Varen, to hear what can happen. You must see it, know it in your heart. There was an uncomfortable silence until Juin returned, and it became more uncomfortable still as 2 Ogier women followed him, guiding a dark-bearded Ogier of middle years, who shambled between them as if he did not quite know how his legs worked. His face sagged, without any expression at all, and his big eyes were vacant and unblinking, not staring, not looking, not even seeming to see. One of the women gently wiped drool from the corner of his mouth. They took his arms to stop him. His foot went forward, hesitated, then fell back with a thump. He seemed as content to stand as to walk, or at least as uncaring. Trail was one of the last among us to go along the ways, Alara said softly. He came out as you see him.
Will you touch him, Varen?
Moiraine gave her a long look, then rose and strode to Trail. He did not move as she laid her hands on his wide chest, not even a flicker of an eye to acknowledge her touch. With a sharp hiss, she jerked back, staring up at him, then whirled to face the elders. He is empty. This body lives, but there is nothing inside it. Nothing. Every elder wore a look of unbearable sadness. Nothing. One of the elders to Alara's right said softly. Her eyes seemed to hold all the pain Trail's no longer could. No mind, no soul. Nothing of Trail remains but his body. He was a fine tree singer, one of the men sighed. Alara motioned, and the two women turned Trail to lead him out. They had to move him before he began to walk. We know the risks, Varen said, but whatever the risks, we must follow the Horn of Valere. The eldest nodded. The Horn of Valere. I do not know whether it is worse news that it is in Darkfriend hands or that it has been found at all. She looked down the row of elders. Each nodded in turn, one of the men tugging his beard doubtfully first. Very well. Varen tells me time is urgent. I will show you to the waygate myself. Rand was feeling half relieved and half afraid when she added, You have with you a young Ogier, loyal, son of Arent, son of Halan, from steading Shangtai. He is far from his home. We need him, Rand said quickly. His words slowed under surprised stares from the elders and Varen, but he went on stubbornly. We need him to go with us, and he wants to. Is there some reason he cannot come with us? Ingtar asked. As Matt says, he has held his own. I don't know that we need him, but if he wants to come, why? We do need him, Varen broke in smoothly. Few any longer know the ways, but Loyal has studied them. He can decipher the guidings. Alara eyed them each in turn and settled to a study of Rand. She looked as if she knew things. All the elders did, but she most of all. Varen says you are Tavern, she said at last, and I can feel it in you. That I can do so means that you must be very strongly Tavern. Indeed, for such talents ever run weakly in us, if at all. Have you drawn Loyal, son of Arant, son of Halan, into Tamarau Ailen, the web the pattern weaves around you? I just want to find the horn and Rand let the rest of it die. Alara had not mentioned Matt's dagger. He did not know whether Varen had told the elders or held it back for some reason. He is my friend, eldest. Your friend, Alar said. He is young by our way of thinking. You are young too, but Tavaran, you will look after him, and when the weaving is done, you will see that he comes safely home to steading Shangtai. I will, he told her. It had the feeling of a commitment, the swearing of an oath. Then we will go to the waygate. Outside, Loyal scrambled to his feet when they appeared, Alair and Vereen leading. Ingtar sent Yurin off at a run to fetch Uno and the other soldiers. Loyal eyed the eldest warily, then fell in with Rand at the rear of the procession. The Ogier women who had been watching him were all gone. Did the elders say anything about me? Did she? He peered at Alar's broad back as she ordered Juin to have their horses brought. She started off with Varen, while Juin was still bowing himself away, bending her head to talk quietly. "She told Rand to take care of you," Mat told Loyal solemnly as they followed, "and see you got home safely as a babe. I don't see why you can't stay here and get married. She said you could come with us." Rand glared at Mat, which made Mat chortle under his breath. It sounded odd, coming from that drawn face. Loyal was twirling the stem of a true heart blossom between his fingers. "Did you go picking flowers?" Rand asked. "Aerith gave it to me." Loyal watched the yellow petals spin. "She really is very pretty, even if Mat does not see it." "Does that mean you don't want to go with us after all?" Loyal gave a start. "What?" "Oh no. I mean, yes, I do want to go." "She only gave me a flower, just a flower." He took a book out of his pocket, though, and pressed the blossom under the front cover. As he returned the book, he murmured to himself, barely loud enough for Rand to hear, "She said I was handsome, too." Mat let out a wheeze and doubled over, staggering along, clutching his sides, and Loyal's cheeks colored. "Well, shh, she said it. I didn't." Perrin rapped Mat smartly on the top of his head with his knuckles. "Nobody ever said Mat was handsome." He's just jealous." "That's not true," Mat said, straightening abruptly. "Marissa Ayelen thinks I'm handsome. She told me so more than once." "Is Marissa pretty?" Loyal asked. "She has a face like a goat," Perrin said blandly. Mat choked, trying to get his protest out. Rand grinned in spite of himself. Marissa was almost as pretty as Egwene. And this was almost like old times, almost like being back home, bantering back and forth, and nothing more important in the world than a laugh and twitting the other fellow. As they made their way through the town, Ogier greeted the eldest, bowing or curtsying, eyeing the human visitors with interest. Alar's set face kept anyone from stopping to speak, though. The only thing that indicated when they left the town was the absence of the mounds. There were still Ogier about, examining trees or sometimes working with pitch and saw or axe where there were dead limbs or where a tree needed more sunlight. They handled the tasks tenderly. Juin joined them, leading their horses, and Hurin came riding with Uno and the other soldiers and the pack horses just before Alar pointed and said, "It is over there." Rand felt a momentary surprise. The waygate had to be outside the steading. The ways had been begun with the one power. They could not have been made inside, but there was nothing to indicate they had crossed the boundary. Then he realized there was a difference. The sense of something lost that he had felt since entering the steading was gone. That gave him another sort of chill. Seddon was there again, waiting. Alar led them past a tall oak, and there in a small clearing stood the big slab of the waygate, the front of it delicately worked in tightly woven vines and leaves from 100 different plants. Around the edge of the clearing, the Ogier had built a low stone coping that seemed as if it had grown there, suggesting a circle of roots. The look of it made Rand uncomfortable. It took him a moment to realize that the roots suggested were those of bramble and briar, burning leaf and itch oak, not the sort of plants into which anyone would want to stumble. The eldest stopped short of the coping. "The wall is meant to warn away any who comes here. Not that many of us do. I myself will not cross it, but you may." Juin did not go as close as she did. He kept rubbing his hands on the front of his coat and would not look at the waygate. "Thank you," Varen told her. "The need is great, or I would not have asked it." Rand tensed as the Aes Sedai stepped over the coping and approached the waygate. Loyal took a deep breath and muttered to himself, Uno and the rest of the soldiers shifted in their saddles and loosened swords in their scabbards. There was nothing along the ways against which a sword would be any use, but it was something to convince themselves they were ready. Only Ingtar and the Aes Sedai seemed calm. Even Allah gripped her skirt with both hands. Varen plucked the Avendasora leaf, and Rand leaned forward intently. He knew an urge to assume the void, to be where he could reach Seddon if he needed to. The greenery carved across the waygate stirred in an unfilled breeze, leaves fluttering as a gap opened down the center of the mass, and the two halves began to swing open. Rand stared at the first crack. There was no dull, silvery reflection behind it, only blackness, blacker than pitch. "Close it," he shouted. "The black wind." "Close it." Vareen took one startled look and thrust the three-pointed leaf back in among all the varied leaves already there. It stayed when she took her hand away and backed toward the coping. As soon as the Avendasora leaf was back in its place, the waygate immediately began to close. The crack disappeared, vines and leaves merging, hiding the blackness of machine shin, and the waygate was only stone again, if stone carved in a nearer semblance of life than seemed possible. Alar let out a shuddering breath. Mashin shin. So close. "It didn't try to come out," Rand said. Juin made a strangled sound. "It cannot leave them." She sounded calm, but she still wiped her hands on her skirt. Rand opened his mouth, then gave it up. "And yet," she went on, "I wonder at it being here. First in Karahen, now here.
I wonder."
She gave Rand a sidelong glance that made him jump. The look was so quick that he did not think anyone else noticed it, but to Rand it seemed to connect him with the black wind. "I have never heard of this," Alar said slowly. "Machine shin waiting when a waygate was opened. It always roamed the ways, but it has been long, and perhaps the black wind hungers and hopes to catch some unwary one entering a gate. Varen, assuredly you cannot use this waygate, and however great your need, I cannot say I am sorry. The ways belong to the shadow now." Rand frowned at the waygate. Could it be following me? There were too many questions. Had Fane somehow ordered the black wind? Varen said it could not be done. And why would Fane demand that he follow, then try to stop him? He only knew that he believed the message. He had to go to Tomenhead. If they found the Horn of Valerie and Mat's dagger under a bush tomorrow, he still had to go. Varen stood with eyes unfocused in thought. Mat was sitting on the coping with his head in his hands, and Perrin watched him worriedly. Loyal seemed relieved that they could not use the waygate, and ashamed at being relieved. "We are done for here," Ingtar announced. Perrin said, I followed you here against my better judgment, but I can no longer follow. I mean to return to Kerhien. Barthanes can tell me where the Dark Friends went, and somehow I will make him do it. Fane went to Tomenhead, Rand said wearily, and where he went, that's where the horn is, and the dagger. I suppose. Ch. Perrin shrugged reluctantly. I suppose we could try another waygate. At another steading? Loyal stroked his chin and spoke quickly, as if to make up for his relief at the failure here. Stedding Cantuan lies just above the river Irilel. and Steading Taijing is east of it in the spine of the world. But the Waygate in Camelin, where the grove was, is closer, and the gate in the grove at Tar Valon is closest of all. Whichever Waygate we try to use, Vereen said absently, I fear we will find Ma Shan waiting. She muttered to herself instead, shaking her head as if arguing with herself. What we need, Huron said diffidently, is one of those portal stones. He looked to Alar, then Varen, and when neither told him to stop, he went on, sounding increasingly confident. The Lady Selene said those old Aes Sedai had studied those worlds, and that was how they knew how to make the ways, and that place we were. Well, it only took us 2 days, Les, to travel 100 leagues. If we could use a portal stone to go to that world, or one like it, why, it'd take no more than a week or 2 to reach the Aryth Ocean, and we could come back right on Toman Head. Maybe it isn't so quick as the ways, but it's a long sight quicker than riding off west. What do you say, Lord Ingtar? Lord Rand? Varen answered him. What you suggest might be possible, Sniffer, but as well hope to open this Waygate again and find Machine Shin gone as hope to find a portal stone. I know none closer than the Isle Waste, though we could go back in the Kinslayer's dagger, if you, or Rand, or Loyal think you could find that stone again. Rand looked at Matt. His friend had lifted his head hopefully at this talk of the stones. A few weeks, Varen had said. If they simply rode west, Matt would never live to see Toman Head. I can find it, Rand said reluctantly. He felt ashamed. Matt's going to die. Dart friends have the Horn of Valir. Fane will hurt Iman's field if you don't follow him, and you're afraid to channel the power. Once to go and once to come back. Twice more won't drive you mad. What really made him afraid, though, was the eagerness that leaped inside him at the thought of channeling again, of feeling the power fill him, of feeling truly alive. I do not understand this, Alar said slowly. The portal stones have not been used since the Age of Legends. I did not think there was anyone who still knew how to use them. The brown Aja knows many things, Varen said dryly, and I know how the stones may be used. The eldest nodded. Truly there are wonders in the White Tower of which we do not dream. But if you can use a portal stone, there is no need for you to ride to Kinslayer's dagger. There is a stone not far from where we stand. The wheel weaves as the wheel weaves, and the pattern provides what is needful. The absent look dropped from Varen's face altogether. Take us to it, she said briskly. We have lost more than enough time already.